Chapter 147. Ling Han's group moved in a mighty manner. Guang Yuan and the others all had a hint of a meaningful smile on their lips. They were lone cultivators, and their temperaments were wild and untamed, but none of them were idiots. From the attitude of those two imperial guards earlier, they could tell that Ling Han's identity was definitely not simple. Even the imperial guards seemed to be blind to side with him, so this trip was a daunting one without any mishaps. The Earth and Water faction only had 3 spiritual ocean tier martial artists and a few dozen gushing spring tier martial artists, which was much weaker than their group. The group swaggered through the streets, and very soon, they arrived at the Earth and Water faction. Though the Earth and Water faction was a faction in name, in reality, it was no different from a clan's power. They had a courtyard that occupied an extremely large area in the city, and all the leaders of the faction lived here. At this moment, the main entrance was already on standby. Obviously, after Ai Lian had returned to report the news, the Earth and Water faction had already made their move. "Sir, you first snatched the treasures of our faction's disciples, and now you've come to our doors so aggressively. Could it be that you think there's no one in our Earth and Water faction?" an old man said darkly, his body exuding a powerful aura. Ling Han could not help but smile. So it turned out that the Earth and Water faction had mistakenly thought that the cause of the incident was the golden flower of the stone. He shook his head, and said, "Your intelligence department is really too poor. You've smashed so many of my shops, and you don't even know who I am." The old man was an elder of the Earth and Water faction, and his cultivation level was at the 2nd layer of the spiritual ocean tier. His name was Lu Yu. He stared at Ling Han for a while, but found that the latter's appearance was really unfamiliar. That's right, smashing people's shops was a small business for the Earth and Water faction, and it was absolutely impossible for it to alarm a big shot like him. He had absolutely no idea that he had made such an enemy. At this moment, a middle-aged man's expression changed, and he moved closer to Lu Yu's ear and whispered a few words. The old man nodded slightly, revealing an expression of disapproval. "Fuck, so it's just a small matter like a few ready-to-wear shops being smashed." In Lu Yu's eyes, how could the value of a few ready-to-wear shops compare to the golden flower of the stone? You snatched the treasures of his faction's disciples, and the value of this was already several hundred times that of the shops that had been smashed. No matter what, the Earth and Water faction was the one who suffered the most. This brat must be the young master of some rich family, and had been spoiled since he was young. That was why he acted on impulse, coming over to seek revenge after a few shops were smashed. "Hung, I don't know what you're talking about, but you keep pouring dirty water on my faction." Lu Yu completely denied the matter of smashing the shops. After all, this was not a glorious thing to say. Although the Earth and Water faction was just a gangster faction in the eyes of the people of the Imperial City, they themselves thought very highly of themselves. "Leave behind the golden flower of the stone, and pay another 10 million silver coins. Then you can get lost," he said to Ling Han unyieldingly. Ling Han snickered, and said, "You really are domineering. However, do you guys have the confidence to be domineering?" He began to walk towards the main doors. "How dare you!" Immediately, someone leaped out and grabbed at Ling Han's throat, wanting to take him down in one fell swoop. "Get lost!" Another person leaped out from behind Ling Han, and his sword flashed like water, sweeping towards that person. The expression of that person from the Earth and Water faction could not help but tighten. He hurriedly turned around and stepped aside, only to see that there was already a middle-aged man wielding a sword standing in front of Ling Han. The aura exuding from him was not the slightest bit weaker than his own. Ling Han did not even pause for a moment and continued to advance. This kind of contemptuous attitude greatly enraged the members of the Earth and Water faction. They all leaped out and charged towards Ling Han. However, those people that Ling Han had hired naturally could not just take the money and do nothing. They all leaped out and protected Ling Han. This was 100 against 13, and Ling Han's side had a great advantage. Moreover, there were still 7 elites of spiritual ocean tier who had not made a move yet. Only now did Lu Yu realize that there were still 7 people whose auras were not the slightest bit weaker than his own, and his expression involuntarily tensed up. They were in the gushing spring tier, so it did not matter how many people there were. As long as he could severely wound a few of them with lightning speed, it was guaranteed that the rest would flee like rats. They were lone cultivators, after all. When they had the upper hand, they were fiercer than anyone else, but once they fell into a disadvantageous position, it was guaranteed that they would turn into a pile of loose sand and flee faster than anyone else. However, now that 7 elites of spiritual ocean tier had actually appeared, it was not easy to deal with them. This brat was really rich and overbearing, actually hiring elites of spiritual ocean tier. No wonder he dared to come here and challenge them. Lu Yu thought for a moment, then said, "Friends, no matter what conditions this brat offers you, as long as you can stand by and watch today, the Earth and Water faction will pay the reward he promised." He could be considered to be quite decisive. Guang Yuan snickered, and said, "Elder Lu, as a person, we must keep our word. Moreover, we have already accepted a mission from the Heaven Military Hall. If we shirk our responsibilities now, who would dare to hire us in the future?" "You recognize me?" Lu Yu asked. "Hehe, Elder Lu Yu is also known as the Soft Yang Needle. You are skilled in using hidden weapons without anyone noticing. Who wouldn't recognize you?" Guang Yuan said calmly. Then, he waved his hand, and said, "The main character today is young Master Han. If you have anything to say, just say it to young Master Han. We are only responsible for protecting young Master Han's safety." Old fox. Lu Yu cursed in his mind. He had originally wanted to use the Earth and Water faction to pressure the other party, but the other party had casually pushed the responsibility onto Ling Han. This made him feel as if he had punched cotton, and it was very uncomfortable. "Brat, it's not too late to stop now," he said to Ling Han, "as long as you compensate for the losses of my faction." Just as he was mumbling, Ling Han suddenly shot out a punch, and actually knocked the signboard off the door. With a pang, it fell to the ground. This signboard was made of bronze, and the loud sound it made when it fell to the ground caused a lot of people to jump in fright. When the members of the Earth and Water factions saw this, their eyes all turned red. That was the signboard of the Earth and Water faction. As the saying went, "Don't hit people in the face." This signboard was equivalent to the face of the Earth and Water faction, and now that it had been smashed to the ground by Ling Han, everyone was naturally enraged. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, "Last night, you all had a good time making a ruckus in my shop, right? Today, I'll let you all have a good time as well." He raised his foot and suddenly stomped down. The power of the 9th layer of element gathering tier exploded. Pa! This signboard instantly split down the middle, and broke into 2 pieces. "You're seeking death." The members of the Earth and Water faction were all enraged. They wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into 1,000 pieces. Although it was not allowed to kill within the Imperial City, that did not mean that they had to endure when someone came knocking on their door. Wounding someone in self-defense or killing someone was not a crime. Ignorant brat. Lu Yu's killing intent was completely revealed, and he suddenly leaped towards Ling Han. With a raise of his hand, shio, 9 golden needles shot out, intertwined with his unique origin power. They had the effect of piercing through origin power defenses, and were very vicious indeed. "Elder Yu, your opponent is me." Guang Yuan roared loudly. His body trembled, and actually emitted a boundless golden light, as if he was a Buddha. He struck out with a single hand, and shouted, "The power of Buddhism is boundless, send one to the afterlife." Hong, the golden light was dazzling, and indescribably vast. Ling Han did not even give him a second look, and only continued to stride forwards, entering into the Earth and Water faction. He smiled faintly, and said to Hu Niu, Come, let's compete and see who can smash more things. Niu will definitely win." Hu Niu was in high spirits. Chapter 148. "Madam, please speak. If I can do it, I naturally won't refuse, but if I can't, then I dare not accept this gift," Ling Han said very calmly. The young girl revealed an expression of shock. he could still be so calm after hearing about the effects of this pair of gloves. Was this guy really a youth? Why did he look like an old man who had been through many hardships? Madame Yen smiled and said, "Since I asked Master Ling for help, then Master Ling will definitely be able to do it. I want to ask Master Ling for help, and ask the master behind Master Ling to concoct a permanent pill for me." Permanent pill? Ling Han looked surprised. Madam has a friend who is in a state of suspended animation. How did you know? Madame Yen suddenly stood up, revealing an extremely excited expression. The permanent pill was a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, but it was infinitely close to Earth grade. The number of black-grade high-level alchemists that could concoct it could be counted on one's fingers. In the past, Madame Yen had also begged Fu Yuansheng and Wu Songlin to concoct it, but the two of them did not have the slightest confidence, and refused Madame Yen. Now, Ling Han could guess the effects of the permanent pill the moment he heard its name, so how could she not believe that there was a Grandmaster alchemist behind Ling Han, who was even more awesome than Fu Yuansheng and Wu Songlin? Earth-grade alchemist. Everything that happened in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion naturally did not escape her eyes and ears. Thus, when she found out that Ling Han had a deep relationship with the two big shots of alchemy, she guessed that there should be an even stronger alchemist behind Ling Han, or else it would be impossible for Wu Songlin and Wu Songlin to lower themselves to befriend him. This made her decide to befriend Ling Han, and see if she could ask the Grandmaster behind Ling Han to help her concoct the permanent pill. "I guessed," Ling Han said calmly. He naturally would not tell her that he was the alchemy emperor in his last life, and that he had seen and heard of every pill recipe in his last life. The calmer he appeared, the higher his position in Madame Yan's heart. This was called confidence. "Master Ling, does the Grandmaster behind you have the confidence to concoct this permanent pill?" Madame Yen asked, trembling slightly. "Sure." Ling Han nodded, a smile appearing on his face. In fact, if it was a few days ago, he really wouldn't have any confidence. This was because this was a pill that was infinitely close to Earth grade, and he could only refine yellow grade pills. However, after merging with the mystical fire, he was confident that he could refine any elixir below the Earth grade. After all, he was once the alchemy emperor. Really? Happiness came so suddenly that Mrs. Yen felt it was unreal. "Yes." Ling Han nodded. Many thanks, young master." Madame Yen bowed, her eyes brimming with tears. Ling Han said, "Give me the materials and come to Huyang University in 3 days to collect them." 3 days. A problem that had troubled her for 10 years could be solved in just 3 days. Lady Yen revealed an expression of surprise and bewilderment. After being stunned for a moment, she said, Shuang, fetch the ingredients for me." "Yes, madam." The young girl beside her quickly answered. Her name was Yun Shuang, an orphan adopted by Lady Yen. She had been pampered and raised like her own daughter since she was young. Very quickly, Yun Shuang brought a wooden box. This was much bigger than the one before. "Then I will take my leave," Ling Han said, reaching out to take the wooden box. "Let me send a carriage to send young master back." Lady Yen pointed at the wooden box in Ling Han's hand. With these 2 items, it would be very inconvenient for him to move. Ling Han actually had a spatial ring, but he naturally couldn't use it in front of Lady Yen. He nodded and said, "Then I will trouble madam." "No need to be so polite, young Master Ling." Lady Yen solved a big problem and couldn't help but be in a good mood. A bright smile blossomed on her face. Shuang, send young Master Ling back for me." "Yes, madam." Yun Shuang answered respectfully. Accompanied by Yun Shuang, Ling Han exited the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. There was already a carriage parked at the entrance. Just looking at the carriage, it was a fine horse that was pure white in color, and there was a pair of antlers on its forehead. This was a cloud deer horse, a type of demonic beast. It wasn't very powerful, but because of its good appearance, it was usually used as a mount, and was very expensive. The inside of the carriage was even more luxurious. There were even soft couches to lie down and rest on. There were fresh fruits and fine wine, and one could enjoy all the luxury they could while traveling. "Young Master Han, please," Yun Shuang said. She was very curious about Ling Han. Such a young man could actually solve the problem that had troubled Lady Yen for many years. Ling Han entered the carriage, took out the pair of gloves, and began to refine them. Yun Shuang, on the other hand, was extremely gloomy as she sat at the side. She was an extremely beautiful woman, and any man who saw her would want to stick their eyeballs onto her body. Yet this brat was good, and he was only paying attention to that pair of gloves. She admitted that this pair of gloves was indeed very valuable, but it was already his. He could use it at any time, but was she someone that anyone could see? What a silly brat. Ling Han didn't know that in this girl's heart, he had already become a young man who didn't know how to flirt. He studied this pair of gloves, and his palm brushed against the patterns engraved on the surface of the gloves, deep in thought. The use of spirit tools was to increase battle prowess, but usually, it was achieved through the user's own power. For example, if a spirit tool was sealed with the power of ice, then once it was used, it would be sealed in ice for 1,000 miles, and snow would fall for 10,000 miles. It was extremely powerful. This didn't directly increase the battle prowess of a martial artist. But this pair of gloves could directly increase the battle prowess of a martial artist by 1 star. This made Ling Han interested, and he wanted to understand the ingenuity behind it. If he could directly use it inside his body, then wouldn't that be even more amazing? He was unperturbed, like a monk who had attained the Tao. Even though there was a beautiful woman sitting in front of him, he acted as if he didn't see her. Yun Shuang's beautiful face couldn't help but twitch, appearing extremely unconvinced. Too despicable, she was a beauty. Pang, a sudden change occurred. The carriage actually split open from the middle. It was a flash of saber light, and as if it could cut the heavens and destroy the earth, it cut the carriage into 2 pieces. Who would be so daring to make a move in the imperial city? Ling Han and Yun Shuang both leaped out of the tumbling carriage, and stood firmly on the ground. The coachman wasn't injured much. He drove the horse, and with the broken carriage in tow, he galloped far away before stopping. Ling Han and Yun Shuang raised their heads and looked towards a nearby place. On a wall, there was a young man standing with a saber in his hand, exuding an endless domineering aura. "Feng Yan, Ling Han, I've said it before. Today, I will beat you up." He cracked a smile, but his expression was cold, and the pressure he exuded was terrifying. This was a person who liked to break the rules. Ling Han thought. In his last life, he was also such a person, not bound by any rules. That was because he had enough power to become one of the 7 great heaven-tier warriors in the world. Wasn't that awesome enough? Feng Yan was definitely not an idiot. Previously, he had confronted the 3rd Imperial Prince head-on, and now he was openly cutting off the carriage. This was not just any kind of arrogance, he naturally had his reasons for doing so. "Feng Yan, you've gone too far. Are you not even giving face to Madam?" Yun Shuang said angrily. Was he openly challenging the Cherishing Flower Pavilion to a duel? Chapter 149. I've already given face to Lady Yen. Feng Yan smiled calmly. That's why I didn't make a move in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, and waited here. He had strength, talent, and patience. What a difficult person to deal with. Ling Han thought. To be honest, he even somewhat admired Feng Yan, but the 2 of them were already standing on opposite sides before they even met, and were destined to become enemies. In his last life, a few 100 million Feng Yans added together would not be a match for a single look from him, but now Ling Han looked serious. The 7th layer of Gushing Spring Tear even had the ability to kill him instantly. "Don't worry, I won't kill you, temporarily." Feng Yan smiled, but it was filled with pressure. "Feng Yan." Yun Shuang called out loudly. That was enough. All of them did not take the Cherishing Flower Pavilion seriously, and did not take her, a beauty, seriously at all, making her extremely furious. Feng Yan did not even look at her, and simply slashed through the air. Shua, a flash of saber chi danced towards him like an enraged dragon. With a different tier, the power of saber chi would naturally be different. Ling Han estimated that his 6 flashes of sword chi added together would not even be a tenth of this saber chi. But in his philosophy, there was no such thing as surrendering without a fight. Ling Han gave a loud shout and drew his sword to meet the attack, 6 flashes of sword chi crisscrossing. Pang! Without any suspense, he was sent flying by the saber strike. The box in his left hand instantly flew out, but the sword in his right hand was held tightly. As a swordsman, where the person was, so was the sword. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood. Looking down, there was a deep wound on his chest, and blood was gushing out, but the indestructible heaven scroll was already circulating, and the wound was slowly shrinking. A hint of caution flashed through Feng Yan's eyes. 6 flashes of sword chi, your power has surpassed my expectations, and your physique seems to be much stronger than normal poly-tier warriors. This strike, I originally intended to heavily wound you. Even so, his tone was still calm, as if everything was under control. Ling Han wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stood up proudly. He brandished his sword and said, I admit that you are stronger than me now. I will need about half a year's time to surpass you and trample you under my feet. Ha, ha 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 ha. After Feng Yan was stunned for a moment, he suddenly laughed out loud. He nodded, and said, your talent is indeed extraordinary. To be able to form 6 flashes of sword chi, you are indeed much stronger than I was back then. However, you will not have the chance to live past half a year. At most, you will have 3 months. Even if you are in the imperial palace of Rain Country, I will still drag you out and personally kill you. At the side, Yun Shuang was already dumbfounded, completely speechless. In her heart, both of them were lunatics. Feng Yan was so strong, but Ling Han actually said that he would be able to catch up to him in half a year's time and trample Feng Yan under his feet. And Feng Yan was even crazier. He said that even if Ling Han hid in the imperial palace, he would drag him out and kill him. What kind of treason was this? Oh, then bring it on. Let me experience the strength of the strongest prodigy of Rain Country. Ling Han's fighting spirit soared. It was not that he did not have a trump card, which was the strange fire. If he was burned by the strange fire at close range, not to mention gushing spring tier, even a spiritual ocean tier martial artist would die. No need to provoke me. Since I have already said that I will beat you up today, it is useless even if you kneel on the ground and beg for mercy, Feng Yan said calmly, and delivered another slash. Saber chi danced, its power terrifying. Peng Ling Han was once again sent flying, but this time he was much more prepared. His sword created countless ripples, and actually managed to reduce the power of this slash by more than half. Though he was still sent flying and spitting out blood, the injuries he suffered were much lighter than before. Feng Yan could not help but look shocked, and said, I have only delivered 1 slash, and you are able to grasp the power of my saber and use a strange method to reduce the power of my attack. What a genius! I am actually beginning to hesitate now. A genius that can threaten me like this, should I get rid of him as soon as possible? When he said the last sentence, he did not conceal the killing intent in his heart at all. Ling Han's left hand shook lightly, and the strange fire could be released at any time. This was currently his strongest killing move. Feng Yan leaped down from the wall, and strode towards Ling Han. With every step he took, there was a feeling as if there was an earthquake. Yun Shuang was shocked, and only then did she realize that it was not that the ground was really shaking, but that her mind had actually been unconsciously manipulated by Feng Yan. This guy was so strong. But she still stood out bravely and stood in front of Feng Yan, because Ling Han was related to the concoction of the permanent pill. This was the most important matter for Lady Yan, and even if she lost her own life, she would ensure Ling Han's safety. Back off! Ling Han shouted. He did not need a woman to die for him. For the sake of Lady Yan, I will not harm you. Feng Yan waved his left hand, and a great force swept over. Yun Shuang was instantly pushed to one side, her pretty face pale. She could not catch her breath, and felt extremely uncomfortable. The 9th layer of Poly Poly against the 7th layer of Gushing Spring Tear, this could only be the result. Feng Yan continued to walk towards Ling Han, his expression cold. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Was he going to attack and injure, or kill? Ling Han was on guard. This was an opponent so strong that it almost caused one to feel despair. This little sister is so pretty, could you let me? It was at this moment that a voice suddenly rang out, and a figure suddenly appeared. He was currently looking at Yun Shuang with a lecherous gaze, and his hands were waving like noodles, looking like he was about to grab her. Yun Shuang jumped in fright, and hurriedly used her hands to protect her chest, taking a step back. If breasts are not enough, then buttocks are fine as well. This person settled for the next best thing, and seemed to be very easy to talk to. This was a man who looked to be in his 20s. His appearance was not ugly, but he could not be considered handsome either. He looked like the most ordinary person on the streets. His face was filled with a vulgar smile, and he drooled at Yun Shuang's figure. Yun Shuang was so frightened that she took another step back. Good little sister, don't be afraid, I'm just a pervert, not a bad person. This person's expression was filled with righteousness. Hey, even a pervert could be so self-righteous? Feng Yan's eyes narrowed. With his ability, he actually could not figure out how this person had appeared, and now he could not even figure out how powerful this person was, causing him to involuntarily feel a strong sense of wariness. How should I address you, sir? He asked. Ugly man, don't talk to me. This person spat, his gaze fixed on Yun Shuang. Little sister, what color are your underwear? Yun Shuang's beautiful face lost all color, and Feng Yan's expression was not good either. He said in a low voice, Sir, are you going to stand up for this brat? You are so long-winded, aren't you annoying? This person turned around and swept a glance at Feng Yan. If you continue with your nonsense, I will beat you even uglier. He turned around to look at Yun Shuang and said, Little sister, my name is Gu Fenghua, the peerless Gu Fenghua, a 100% pervert. He said this very proudly, as if being able to become a pervert was a very honorable thing. Reading on a phone is more refreshing. Chapter 150. Feng Yan's expression finally changed, and he could not help but attack. He said, Let me experience your power for myself. He swung his blade, and slashed towards the freak who called himself Gu Fenghua. Bam! Gu Fenghua brandished his fist to meet it. It was unknown what technique he had used, but when his fist was swung out, it actually turned pitch black, as if it was made of metal. When it clashed with the long saber, a series of sparks burst out. After this attack, both of them took a few steps back, and a cautious look appeared on their faces. Sir, you should be in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring Tear, right? Feng Yan said, a proud expression on his face. Otherwise, you would definitely not be able to block this strike of mine. On the other hand, Gu Fenghua's face was filled with shock, and he said, Ugly man, you are clearly not a freak, so how could you have such power? It seemed that in his eyes, all experts were freaks. Feng Yan snorted, and said, Stop trying to mystify me. Today, for your sake, I will temporarily let this brat go. Ugly man, what are you saying out of the blue? How could such a handsome pervert like me possibly know such an ugly brat? Gu Fenghua's face was full of disdain. He turned his head and said to Yun Shuang, Sister, I know that you are unusually big, and this shirt is a little small for you. Why don't you let Big Brother measure it for you and make another one? He stretched out his hand and acted like he was going to touch her again, scaring Yun Shuang into retreating again and again. Feng Yan cast a deep look at Gu Fenghua. There was actually such a young and powerful elite warrior in Rain Country? How come he had never heard of him before? He was a decisive person, and immediately turned around to leave. Pervert, thank you. Ling Han smiled at Gu Fenghua. Yun Shuang's expression involuntarily changed. It was one thing for this person to call himself a pervert, but it was another thing for someone else to call him that. She might even anger this pervert. You really have good eyes. Gu Fenghua gave him a thumbs up. You can actually tell that I'm a pervert. I'm definitely making friends with you. Yun Shuang coughed repeatedly. Everyone could tell that you were a pervert, and this could also become something to brag about. Sure enough, the thoughts of a pervert could not be measured by common sense. You're not from Rain Country, are you? Ling Han looked at the other party, thought for a moment, and said, just now, you used the black iron hand? How do you know about the black iron hand? Gu Fenghua revealed a shocked expression. This was the ultimate technique of his sect, and it was actually recognized by a young man from Rain Country. It was practically inconceivable. His eyes widened as he stared at Ling Han. Could it be that you're also a pervert? The corner of Ling Han's mouth twitched. Indeed, one had to be mentally prepared to become a pervert when communicating with a pervert. He laughed and said, the black iron hand's characteristics are too obvious. When it's activated, the hand will be like black iron, and its strength will continue to increase as one's realm increases. It's definitely not inferior to a spirit artifact of the same level. Gu Fenghua's expression changed again and again. In the end, he revealed a look of joy, and said, you are indeed a pervert. We can become good friends. Why have you come to Rain Country? Ling Han repeated the same question. My master predicted that a rare treasure would appear here, so I came to see if I could take advantage of it, Gu Fenghua said. I'm sorry to disappoint you. Some time ago, there was indeed an ancient site that appeared, and a high-level spirit artifact flowed out with the flow. However, it's already gone now. Ling Han shook his head. I came here for nothing. Gu Fenghua beat his chest and stamped his feet, appearing to be extremely disappointed. But he immediately broke into a smile, and said, however, I managed to meet another pervert on this trip, so it's still worth it. Ling Han could not help but break out in a cold sweat, and said, only someone with your looks has the right to be called a pervert. My name is Ling Han, and I definitely cannot compare with you in terms of perverseness. You're very self-aware. Gu Fenghua appeared to be very pleased with himself. Then, he sighed and shook his head. Since I've missed the opportunity, I'd better continue to return to the mountain to cultivate. Please. Ling Han and Yun Shuang both looked like they were sending him off respectfully. No one could stand this pervert. Then I'll be leaving, Gu Fenghua said. We won't be seeing you off, Ling Han and Yun Shuang said at the same time. Gu Fenghua suddenly stopped after walking a few steps, turned around, and asked, Sister, are you really not going to let me measure you? Get lost. Yun Shuang pointed a finger, forcefully suppressing the urge to kill. Come, my perversion has not reached perfection yet, Gu Fenghua mumbled. This time, when I return to the mountain, I'll definitely surpass Master in terms of perversion, and become the most perverted. After saying this, he leaped, and as his figure rose and fell, he had already disappeared into the dark street. The world is so big, and indeed, there are all sorts of strange things. Ling Han said slowly. Yun Shuang said, Feng Yan actually dared to destroy the carriage of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. When I return, I will definitely report the truth to Madam, and have Madam pressure the Academy to severely punish that evil person. Ling Han shook his head, and said, you will probably be disappointed. Feng Yan must have gotten some powerful backing this time, so the Academy will not punish him. Otherwise, Feng Yan would not have openly challenged the third Imperial Prince. In terms of reputation in the Imperial City, the third Imperial Prince was definitely not inferior to Madame Yan. Yun Shuang was still panting with anger. She called the coachman over, and they returned to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion together. Meanwhile, Ling Han put the wooden chest into his spatial ring. Since he had promised Madame Yan, and had even received her benefits, he naturally had to do his part and concoct the permanent pill. This time, it was a peaceful journey, and he returned to Huyang University. The security of the imperial city doesn't seem to be that great. He mumbled. Feng Yan had blocked the streets and attacked, but there was no sign of the army. He didn't know if it was because their reaction was too slow, or if they had not planned to move at all. Let's concoct the permanent pill first. He began to concoct the pill. With the abilities of his last life, concocting alchemical pills close to Earth grade was naturally a piece of cake, but he did not dare to be careless now. After all, he had to rely on the strange fire to raise the temperature of the flames, and it was impossible for him to control it as he pleased. But for the Alchemy Emperor, this was only something that he needed to pay attention to. Sorting out the ingredients, purifying them, he used all the techniques as smoothly as flowing water. If Fu Yuansheng and Wu Songlin were present, they would definitely pale in shock again, because the speed at which Ling Han was concocting now was many times faster than when he had displayed it in front of them. Previously, Ling Han had only not wanted to frighten them too much. Hong, the strange fire burned fiercely, providing a temperature that far surpassed that of Ling Han's cultivation level. This caused Ling Han to sweat profusely, but the sweat was very quickly evaporated by the high temperature. Even his skin was slightly cracked, showing signs of dehydration. Thankfully, his physique was strong enough, and was almost close to body of rock cliff. It was not a problem for him to withstand such high temperature. Half an hour later, 3 different colored flames suddenly appeared on his hands. 3 fire guide, this was the signature technique that he had created. The pill is done. He laughed loudly and opened the lid of the furnace. His gaze swept across the furnace, and he revealed a look of astonishment. The strange fire is indeed extraordinary. Originally, it was impossible for me to concoct alchemical pills close to Earth grade, but not only have I concocted them, they have even reached 16 star. This has greatly exceeded my expectations. No wonder so many alchemists in my last life wanted to obtain a ball of strange fire. It is indeed very helpful. If I confuse more strange fires, wouldn't the quality of the alchemical pills I concoct be even higher? Chapter 151. What's going on? Ling Han asked. Yun Shuang only sobbed. Thankfully, this place was deserted enough. Otherwise, anyone who saw this would think that Ling Han was bullying her. If you don't tell me, how am I supposed to help you? Fine, I'll tell you after you've cried enough. Ling Han opened the door and entered. Just as he was about to close the door, Yun Shuang squeezed her way in and grabbed onto the corner of his shirt with a slender hand. I say, why do all of you like Nyo who tugs at the corner of other people's clothes? Nyo's fine, but men are like this, and women are also like this. It'll really trouble me, Ling Han said with a shake of his head. N. Nyo nodded heavily, making her attitude clear. Ling Han is Nyo's. Madam, she. Yun Shuang was obviously not in the mood to joke. She had just opened her mouth to speak when she began to cry again. Ling Han sighed, and said, in 3 breaths' time, if you are still crying, I'll throw you out. Naughty Lu Ru'er walked out from the inner room, and glared fiercely at Ling Han. It seems that throwing one out is not enough. Ling Han rolled up his sleeves. Ha, damn scoundrel, let me tell you, my cultivation has already recovered by 70%, and I no longer need to be threatened by you. Lu Ru'er said proudly. Then why don't you two hurry up and get lost? Every day, you eat and use my food. Don't you know that it costs a lot of money? Ling Han said exasperatedly. Lu Ru'er instantly exploded in anger. She felt that this guy did not have the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex. She and her sister were obviously rare beauties, but this guy actually did not have the slightest bit of affection for them. He was practically a freak. He shouldn't have the hobbies of the opposite sex, right? That was very possible. Otherwise, how could he possibly ignore the charms of these 2 sisters? When she thought of this, she could not help but shiver all over. However, after being interrupted by the 2 of them, Yun Shuang finally calmed her emotions, and said, Please take me in, young Master Han. Shuang Shuang has nowhere else to go. N. Ling Han was startled, and said, Aren't you a member of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? You actually came here to ask me to take you in. What kind of logic is that? Do you all think that this place of mine is a rubbish dump? 1, 2, 3, who knows if there will still be any more in the future? Lu Ru'er was instantly enraged, and said, Who are you calling rubbish? Young Master Han, madam is too cruel. Yun Shuang Shuang began to cry again. All right. Calm down and speak slowly, from the beginning to the end. Don't cry after every sentence, or I really won't be able to take it anymore, Ling Han said. Come, sit down first. Lu Ru'er rolled her eyes at Ling Han, and walked over to help Yun Shuang Shuang into the house. After having her sit down, she even poured a cup of hot tea for Yun Shuang Shuang to calm down. Ling Han was Hunyo, and Hunyo was also Ling Han. The two of them shrugged at the same time. They were the masters, so how did they become outsiders instead? Yun Shuang Shuang held the hot tea in her hands, and rested for a while before finally opening her mouth and telling them the whole story. Yen Tianzhao waking up was originally a good thing, but for Yun Shuang Shuang, it was the beginning of a nightmare. That was because she had coincidentally overheard the conversation between Lady Yen and Yen Tianzhao. As it turned out, the reason she had been adopted was not because Lady Yen was looking for spiritual sustenance, but because she had an ulterior motive from the very beginning. Cauldron. Lady Yen probably knew that her son would not be able to wake up in a short period of time, but there was only so much golden cultivation time for a martial artist. How could she allow her son to lose at the starting line? Coincidentally, she had mastered a mystical art that was divided into two parts, the main art and the secondary art. The secondary art could be cultivated by one person, while the main art could be cultivated by the other person. When the time came, as long as the two people cultivated together, the person who cultivated the main art would be able to easily devour the cultivation of the person who cultivated the secondary art, and even his life force. And what she had been cultivating since young was the secondary art, all for the sake of helping Yen Tianzhao. The reason why she had not made her move immediately was because Yen Tianzhao had only just woken up, and was just beginning to cultivate that main art. Once he had achieved a small success, he would take action. At that time, not only would Yun Shuang Shuang lose all her cultivation, she would also lose her life force, and in an extremely short period of time, she would become an old woman. If Lady Yen had treated me sincerely, I would be willing to die 1,000 deaths for Lady Yen. But this kind of result, I am unable to accept. Yun Shuang Shuang's eyes had turned red from crying. Too bad. Lu Ru'er was also wiping away her tears at the side. Her tear ducts were extremely developed, causing Ling Han to criticize silently, You are an assassin, can you not be so emotional? Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, Lady Yen has been in business for many years, so she definitely has an extremely large network of connections and information in the Imperial City. You will not be able to hide from me for long. When the time comes, if Lady Yen comes looking for you, will you be able to resist? Taking away one's adopted daughter was a matter of course. Even the laws of the Empire would support Lady Yen. If Ling Han tried to stop her, then that would be equivalent to kidnapping. Ling Han had a backer, but so did Lady Yen, and her backer was considerably strong. Yun Shuang Shuang's pretty face could not help but change color, and her delicate body trembled. If she was really going to be taken back by Lady Yen, then she would rather die. I've got it. Those two people's injuries are more or less healed. Why don't you leave Rain Country together with them? Ling Han said to Yun Shuang Shuang. That was really good. He could get rid of 3 problems at once. Who said we are leaving Rain Country? Lu Ru'er immediately jumped up. I will definitely kill that traitor. It's more like you're going to die. Ling Han dampened her enthusiasm. You too, it's better if you obediently continue to cultivate. Su Koxian has already been tricked once, so she will definitely not be tricked the next time. You two will no longer have a good chance to scheme against her. Lu Ru'er pouted. She wanted to refute, but knew that Ling Han was right. The difference in power between the two of them was too great, and they had also lost the advantage of taking the initiative, so it was practically impossible for them to assassinate Su Kuexian. Young Master Ling is right. Lu Feng'er also walked out and said, when our injuries have completely healed, we will immediately leave Rain Country. We sisters are very grateful for young Master Ling's care during this period of time, and we hope that we will have the chance to repay young Master Ling in the future. If you two leave early, that would be the best repayment to me, Ling Han said without any trace of politeness. Hun Yo, too, nodded seriously. This detestable guy. Lu Ru'er gave a humph and said, damn scoundrel, if you ever come to Fire Country in the future and are in trouble, remember to look for us sisters. We will definitely take good care of you. She emphasized the word take good care, and it was obvious that she was very resentful. Alright, you can stay with these two sisters tonight, and leave in a few days, Ling Han said to Yun Shuang, pretending that he had not heard anything. Thank you, young Master Han. Thank you, Mrs. Yun Shuang curtsied. Peng, peng, peng. Right at this moment, someone knocked on the door, startling all four of them. Young Master Ling, are you in? A soft and delicate voice came from outside, yet it caused Yun Shuang to involuntarily shiver, and her face had turned pale from fright. Lady Yan. The Lu sisters mouthed at the same time. Ling Han nodded. Kill her. Lu Ru'er's killing intent immediately soared. Reading on one's phone was even more refreshing. Chapter 152. The meat-eating little girl had returned. Hug, hug, hug. Hunyo saw Ling Han at a glance, and immediately pounced on him, throwing herself into Ling Han's arms, burrowing her little head into his chest. Ling Han looked the little girl up and down. Why didn't he see any horns or wings? This little girl didn't seem to have changed at all from before. What was going on? After eating 2 portions of godly medicine, the first refined his skin and the second refined his bones. It was as if he had been reborn, and the change was extremely obvious. But Hunyo didn't change at all, wasn't he just eating it for nothing? No, some changes couldn't be seen from the outside. The little girl's body must have undergone a huge change. Sniff, sniff. Hunyo wrinkled her little nose, and suddenly a fierce light shone in her eyes. With a leap, she jumped out of Ling Han's arms, and returned to her beast-like appearance. Her 4 limbs exerted force on the ground, and she quickly leapt out. Aya! Ling Han immediately realized that Hunyo must have smelled the Lu sisters' scent. This little girl was like a wild beast. Not only did she have a shockingly sensitive nose, she also had a strong sense of territory. Now that 2 strangers had entered her territory, the little girl was naturally going to unleash her ferocious nature. Ling Han hurriedly chased after her. With a few leaps, Hunyo arrived at her own room. Without thinking, she directly rammed her way in, and the door was naturally easily smashed. She leapt in like a little tiger, her mouth slightly open, and her hands turned into sharp claws, ready to strike at any moment. Damn pervert, you really haven't given up on your evil intentions. Ever since Lu Ru'er had entered Ling Han's body, her heart had been beating like a drum, and her face was as red as blood. How could she possibly sleep? When she heard the sound of the door being broken, she naturally thought that Ling Han's lust was aroused, and he ran over to force himself on her. She instantly shot up and struck out with her palm. Her palm struck Hunyo. Although her power had fallen to rock bottom, after a few days of recuperation, her power would definitely surpass body refining tier. With this strike, Hunyo was instantly sent flying. However, she immediately realized that something was wrong. That was not a big pervert or a big pervert, but a little girl. Ling Han also came in, his hands reaching out to catch Hunyo who had been sent flying. Damn, Damn scoundrel. When Lu Ru'er saw Ling Han, she could not help but start cursing. With such a big commotion, Lu Feng'er naturally woke up as well. Her beautiful eyes swept around, not knowing what was going on. Kill, kill. Hunyou struggled in Ling Han's arms. She had not suffered any injury from the attack just now. Ling Han felt relieved and said with a smile, "It's just a misunderstanding. The place you're staying in now is this little girl's room. A few days ago, she wasn't here. Now that she's back, she realized that you're occupying her room. She thought that you were enemies, so she got a little agitated." Not only was he excited, he was about to eat someone up. The Lu sisters thought as they looked at Hunyou's ferocious expression. However, this place belonged to Ling Han, so whatever he said, that was how it should be. It's late. I won't disturb your rest." Ling Han smiled and retreated. However, there was no way to close the door that Hunyou had smashed. They'd talk about it tomorrow. Returning to his own bedroom, Ling Han pressed Hunyou down on the bed, and said, "Little girl, those two girls are temporarily considered friends, don't attack them." Hunyou pouted to express her displeasure. She hated other living beings in her own territory, but since Ling Han had said so, she naturally could only accept it. However, the little girl was still a little girl after all, and soon forgot her displeasure. She stuck herself into Ling Han's arms, and said, "Hug, hug, hug." Ling Han laughed loudly, and carefully examined Hunyou again. However, he did not discover any strange changes on her, which made him feel very strange. "That's not right," he immediately shook his head. Previously, Hunyou had taken a blow from Lu Ru'er, but was completely unharmed. The little girl's physique had indeed been greatly strengthened, but as to what level it had reached, he would have to continuously increase the power of his blows to be able to determine. Whatever, he'd think about it later. The sky was starting to brighten, and Ling Han decided not to sleep, but to begin cultivating. He sat down cross-legged and circulated 5 elements heaven-grade skill. His immortal-grade spirit base trembled slightly, and immediately absorbed the surrounding spiritual chi like a whale swallowing. After taking the godly medicine to strengthen his bones, flesh, and meridians, the speed at which he absorbed spiritual chi also increased slightly. It was not that his spirit base had become stronger, but rather that his meridians had become purer, which naturally allowed the flow of spiritual chi to become smoother, which similarly increased the speed of his cultivation. Of course, this was also because his spirit base was sufficiently awesome. Otherwise, even if he absorbed so much spiritual chi, he would not be able to refine it into origin power in time, so what would be the point? Finally, he swallowed an ancient clear pill to increase the speed of his cultivation. Hunyou became bored after a while, and imitated him, also sitting cross-legged on the bed. Ling Han immediately felt that something was wrong, because another vortex that was absorbing spiritual chi had appeared beside him, fighting for spiritual chi with him, causing his cultivation speed to instantly drop drastically. He opened his eyes, and saw Hunyou sitting cross-legged in a serious manner. Her small face actually had a dignified air. "Yeah." Although he was already certain, he was still extremely shocked when he confirmed it with his own eyes. Hunyou actually awakened her spirit base, and officially stepped onto the path of cultivation. Inconceivable, how old was this little girl? Normally, one would only awaken their spirit base when they were 11 or 12 years old, or even 1 or 2 years earlier, but this little girl awakened 7 or 8 years earlier. Moreover, judging from the intensity of the spiritual power plundering just now, Hunyou's spirit base was definitely a mortal level, actually comparable to his. One had to know that he had a complete spirit base of all 5 elements, and could be ranked in the front even among immortal-level spirit bases, so what was this little girl's spirit base? Ling Han focused his divine sense on his eyes, and used a sliver of the mighty spiritual power from his last life towards Hunyou's dantian. Ha! Ling Han suddenly felt pain in his eyes, and hurriedly turned his head. He stretched out his hand to wipe his eyes, and actually discovered that his hand was stained with blood. However, he did not care about this, as he was shocked by the scene he had just witnessed. Was this real? He had felt Hunyo's spirit base, but was that really a spirit base? Ling Han felt that it was inconceivable, and a cold sweat broke out all over his body. In Hunyo's dantian, that spirit base was actually a person in deep slumber. This was a peerless beauty. Although her eyes were tightly shut, causing her to lose much of her beauty, she was still breathtakingly beautiful. Compared to her, Lu Yutong and Li Xichan both paled in comparison. Without a doubt, it was precisely this peerless beauty that was absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and her efficiency was not the slightest bit inferior to his. Ling Han had never seen this kind of spirit base. It actually took human form. However, this was not what caused him to feel a chill. As he stared at this peerless beauty, she actually opened her eyes, and a terrifying killing intent slashed towards him along with his divine sense. If it was not for the Black Tower shaking slightly at the right time, he probably wouldn't have just been slashed to the point where his eyes bled, but his divine sense would have been directly destroyed. Cell phone reading was much more refreshing. Chapter 153. The soul was a person's root, and if the divine sense was destroyed, then only an empty shell would remain. Just now, Ling Han had circled the gates of hell. Curiosity really killed the cat. Ling Han shook his head. If it wasn't for the fact that there was also a monster hidden inside his body, he would have really suffered a heavy blow just now. Without a doubt, the godly medicine activated some ability of Hunyo, or made her awaken, and this should have happened 4 or 5 years later. However, Ling Han felt a strong sense of strangeness, because the spirit base in Hunyo's body, that peerless beauty, gave him a feeling that it was even stronger than heaven-tier elites. In his last life, whether it was the Sword Emperor or the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, the two strongest existences in heaven tier, they couldn't give him such pressure. He estimated that even if he recovered to heaven tier cultivation, he wouldn't be able to resist such an existence, just like how in his last life, his body was easily shattered by the Black Tower. This definitely wasn't the power of the mortal realm. The Black Tower was mysterious enough, treating his body as its home, but Hunyo was even more extreme, a suspected supreme existence turning into her spirit base. She was obviously just a little girl in the body refining tier. But thinking about it, weren't the two a bit similar? That peerless beauty, could it be that she was also formed from some kind of supreme treasure? To reach such a level, transforming into an incomparably real human form didn't seem strange. What the hell? Ling Han slapped his forehead with his hand. This life was really strange. Not long ago, a shattering void tier elite had arrived, and he was suspected to have died after being besieged by countless heaven-tier elites. Large quantities of 9th-tier spirit tools flowed out with the flow, and even a stock of immoral godly medicine was born, forming a strange fire. And now, there was another existence that was above the heaven tier in Hunyo's body, and there was also a supreme Black Tower in his body. It seemed that shattering void tier suddenly became worthless. Hunyo obviously didn't have much patience, and stopped after cultivating for a while. Seeing Ling Han looking at her, she couldn't help but smile, and with a paw, threw herself into Ling Han's arms, rubbing her stomach, and said, "Hungry, that's right, this lass hasn't eaten for several days. Be obedient and cultivate. I'll cook for you. If you don't cultivate properly, you won't get any meat to eat." Ling Han stated his conditions. "Oh." Hunyo pouted, appearing very unhappy. She did not like cultivation, it was too dry and boring. Ling Han ran to the kitchen to cook. Since the glutton had returned, the mountain of food here would probably be completely consumed in a few days' time, because he could guess that after this round of transformation, Hunyo's appetite would definitely increase considerably. He was already mentally prepared, but Hunyo's sudden increase in appetite still gave him a fright. His appetite has more than doubled. Fortunately, I have money now, and I can take advantage of the third prince. Otherwise, I really can't support this girl. He shook his head. Halfway through the meal, the Lu sisters also woke up. After entering the kitchen, they were immediately startled, and their pretty faces couldn't help but twitch. Is this really a little girl? When it came to the two girls, Hunyo immediately put on a protective expression. Her eyes stared fiercely at the two girls, and a low growl came from her throat, a fierce expression that said, "If you dare stretch out your hand, I'll bite your neck off." "Damn pervert, you really are a pervert." Lu Ruer's beautiful face paled. A young man actually kept a little loli in his house. This was obviously a big problem. "I'm not a pervert, I'm just a bad guy." Ling Han changed Gu Fenghua's famous words. "Little girl, come here quickly, we'll protect you." Lu Ruer waved at Hunyou, but this kind of action was a provocation to Hunyou, causing the little girl to jump onto the table. She placed all four limbs on the table, ready to attack. "Forget it, don't lower yourself to their level." Ling Han helped Hunyou down, and conveniently stuffed a piece of meat into the little girl's mouth, causing the little girl to immediately eat happily. "Who are you calling ignorant?" Lu Ruer said, unconvinced. Ling Han only laughed mischievously, and said, "You two have been recuperating at my place for quite a few days, right? Shouldn't you pay some rent or something?" "Hang, don't you want money?" Lu Ruer said disdainfully, "How much do you want?" "Then it's just so, this amount for each person." Ling Han raised a finger. 1 million. Lu Ruer humphed again, "Deal. Since you've accepted our money, we are your employers, and we have the right to ask you to do things for us." "Che, 1 million. Ling Han shook his head, "You should know that if I hand you over, you too will be dead." "So, we're talking about selling your worth now. Do you think 1 million is appropriate?" Sell your body. You're the one selling your body." Lu Ruer's face instantly paled, but she immediately said, "Then how much do you want?" 10 million, 20 million. When she said 10 million, even she was shocked. It wasn't that they couldn't earn that much money, but they had just started their career, after all, so where would they find so much savings? "You're wrong. You two are as beautiful as flowers and jade, so no matter what, you should be worth at least 100 million. Don't be modest with me, or else I'll send you two to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion and ask how popular the business of two gushing spring-tier beauties would be." Ling Han appeared to be very passionate. Lu Ruer blinked, feeling that it was not good to agree, but it was also not good to refuse. If she agreed, where would she find so much money? If she refused, wouldn't that be lowering her own worth? Her adaptability was not good enough, and she instantly stuttered, appearing to be at a loss as to what to do. "Brother Ling, don't bully little sister." Lu Feng'er smiled faintly. "All right, damn scoundrel, you're deliberately playing with me." Lu Ruer finally came to her senses, her face filled with anger. "Silly girl." Ling Han shook his head. "If you want to stay here, then you'll have to follow my rules. Someone who enters without knocking is the real scoundrel." Lu Ruer knew that he was talking about how she had peeped on him bathing last night, and could not help but feel very embarrassed. She could not help but pout. She was not a scoundrel. Who would have thought that there would be someone bathing in the kitchen in the middle of the night? Were you washing pig's trotters or cooking pig's trotters? When she thought of this, she could not help but reveal a strange smile. This was the so-called spiritual victory method. "In the future, I'll give you 2-3 meals a day," Ling Han said. He reminded Hunyou not to get into conflict with the two girls, and then told her to focus on her cultivation. He had originally wanted to go to Mo Gao's place, but when he thought that the latter had already started cultivating in seclusion to break through to gushing spring tier, he could only give up. Ling Han moved to a place further away, and sat down cross-legged to cultivate. He did not want to stay too close to the little girl and fight for spiritual chi, which would instead make him unable to fully display the advantage of having an immortal grade spirit base. This cultivation session lasted for almost half a day, and Ling Han revealed a satisfied smile. Now, he would be able to advance a small tier every 5 or 6 days, so it would not be long before he would be able to give Feng Yan a big surprise. At noon, Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan both came over, bringing with them a piece of big news. I believe that even Flower Blossom tier warriors would have to give me some face, Ling Han thought to himself. If he had the halo of an alchemist to protect him, at least no one would dare to make a move against him openly. In this life, though I don't want to walk the path of alchemy anymore, who asked me to be too flashy? I've already gotten into big trouble at the poly tier. He sighed, but his face showed that he did not care. In his last life, he was a powerful warrior of heaven tier, and in the last period of his life, he went to all kinds of dangerous historical sites. The dangers he encountered were all 100 times more serious than this, but didn't he still make it through? As for Feng Yan, he was only a small bump in his path of growth. Now, the only things that could concern Ling Han were that mysterious black tower, Hunyou's spirit base that had transformed into a peerless beauty in her dantian and could actually open her eyes, and the third was what had happened to his 4 disciples. That Feng Luo is too despicable. He's obviously a despicable person. I'll go ask Master to step in and expel him. I don't believe that Master Lien will continue to accept him into the academy, Li Si-chan said, unconvinced. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, no need, no need. I'm actually wondering what kind of tricks this pair of brothers will come up with. Feng Yan wanted to kill him, so there was no need for him to be polite. When he had accumulated enough power, he would be killed by both Feng Yan and his brother. Not only this pair of brothers, there was also Wu Bo. He ran to the Ling family and started a massacre, so how could he forgive him so easily? Additionally, there was also Xiang. It was time to deal with this old man. Ling Han walked towards Lu Yutong, and asked, what kind of business does the Qin clan do? Clothing. Lu Yutong immediately answered. Obviously, she had also done her homework. Previously, she had not been able to deal with Xiang, which made her feel guilty. Help me do something. Open a ready-made clothing shop next to all the shops of the Qin clan, and sell them at a price lower than the cost, Ling Han said, as he took out a silver note and stuffed it into her hands. Lu Yutong immediately understood Ling Han's intention. He wanted to crush the Qin clan financially. The reason why Xiang had been able to succeed time and time again was because of the Qin clan's wealth, which allowed him to hire the Earth and Water faction to kidnap people for him. If he had no wealth, the Sun clan would only be able to protect his life. All right, I know what to do. She nodded, and said, however, this could be a bottomless pit. Are you sure you want to expend it like this? Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, don't worry, money is not a problem. For a high-level alchemist, money was naturally not a problem. He only needed to concoct some black-grade high-level medicinal pills, and it was guaranteed that he would be fought over. Lu Yutong was finally relieved. She still wanted to say something, but suddenly sniffed and said, why is there the fragrance of women here? Oh, I've taken in 2 homeless girls, Ling Han said casually. N. Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan looked at each other, simultaneously showing vigilance. Where are they? The 2 girls asked at the same time. When did they become so tacit? Greetings to the 2 ladies. Lu Feng-er and her sister walked out side by side. With 4 great beauties gathered in one room, it seemed as if the room had become much brighter. The 4 girls chattered away, and Ling Han was really bored, so he walked out. Xiao, Hunyou darted out from somewhere and hung onto his body, swinging around like a monkey. Play! The little girl shook Ling Han's arm, her face filled with a pleading expression. All right, go play. Ling Han laughed loudly. He had just walked to the door, and when he was about to leave, he saw a young man walk over. When he saw him, he bowed and said, Zhu Wujiu greets master. Chapter 155. Impressive, truly impressive. Ling Han nodded continuously. According to the description of the sword technique, one must unleash 3,000 flashes of sword rain in order to be considered to have reached the level of great accomplishment. The several dozen flashes of sword rain I unleashed with my sword only managed to reach 1% of the level of great accomplishment. However, the might of each flashes of sword rain is equivalent to a full power attack from me. Even if I were to face it myself, I would have to use the blood-sucking origin gold to transform into a shield to block it. Otherwise, I would not be able to dispel it at all. With this sword technique alone, as long as I break through to the gushing spring tier, I would definitely be able to defeat Feng Yan in a single move. However, that guy should still have some trump cards up his sleeves. It won't be easy to kill him in an instant. Moreover, this sword technique uses up too much origin power. One strike is equivalent to a few dozen full power attacks. If it wasn't for the fact that the space in my Dantian has expanded by about 100 times, I would not be able to withstand such a few attacks. The Sword Emperor is indeed a freak. This guy must have taken a spatial pill when he was young. Otherwise, even if he was in the gushing spring tier, he would not be able to withstand such exhaustion. If that's the case, then in my last life, aside from the Sword Emperor, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden also controlled endless fire of karma. She must have fused with a ball of strange fire, or even more. The Setting Sun Saber Emperor obtained a treasured saber forged from blood-sucking origin gold, which is also incredibly shocking. There's also Ma Wei Yang, Zi Shuexian, and Na Lan Tuesday. These three people are not simple either. It seems like they all have some kind of secret treasure, and only my battle prowess is the weakest. Now that I think about it, their backgrounds should be very powerful, which is why they were able to step into heaven tier at such a young age. It's only because I relied on the power of alchemical pills that I managed to surpass them even though I started later. This stream of water in the vast lands seems to be much deeper than what I've seen. Forget it, 10,000 years have already passed. These guys should return to dust and dust to dust. I can't be bothered to think about it. Ling Han recovered his origin power, and once again began to cultivate the second style of black origin sword arts. 10,000 techniques returned to 1. This was a powerful move, and required a certain amount of time to accumulate power. It was as if 10,000 attacks had been fused together into a single attack. In his last life, when Ling Han had obtained black origin sword arts, he had only skimmed through it. Because he had not thought of cultivating it at all, he naturally did not take it to heart. But now that he was studying it, he could not help but pale. Was this really a black-grade martial arts technique? One style could unleash 3,000 full power attacks, and the other style was fusing 10,000 attacks into a single attack. Its power was absolutely insane. Not to mention Earth-grade, even Heaven-grade martial arts techniques would not be this awesome. How could this be possible? If it was Earth-grade or Heaven-grade, then how could he cultivate it now? Body refining and origin gathering tiers could only cultivate yellow-grade martial arts techniques, while gushing spring tier and spiritual ocean tier could advance one step further and cultivate black-grade martial arts techniques. Spiritual pedestal tier could advance one step further and cultivate earth-grade martial arts techniques. Only by shedding one's mortal body and changing one's bones and advancing into the flower blossom tier would one have the right to peek into heaven-grade martial arts techniques. Chapter 156. What do you guys think, is senior brother Feng Yan really Lord Lian's illegitimate son? In the female dormitory of Huyang Academy, a young girl with freckles on her face was currently asking the other three girls with a gossipy expression. If Ling Han was present, he would definitely recognize that one of the girls was Shenzian. I'm guessing so. Otherwise, why would Lord Lian be so protective of him? He's going against the imperial family, a girl with two braids said. Not necessarily. Maybe he's the illegitimate son of an illegitimate son, another girl in green said. Shenzian did not speak. Previously, when she was in Sangyan College, she was the most talented, which made her very proud. But only after entering Huyang University did she realize that she was a frog at the bottom of a well. Any random genius here would not be weaker than her, and most of them were stronger than her. Moreover, her birth was lowly, so she naturally could not raise her head high in this academy where nobles gathered. In less than a month, all her pride had been worn away. What enmity does senior brother Feng have with that person called Ling Han that he actually asked his younger brother to gather information on his evil deeds and even gave him a reward? the girl in braids asked curiously. When Shen Zian heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. Junior sister Shen, you came from the Yuan City, and senior brother Feng Yan and that Ling Han also came from the Yuan City. Do you know what enmity they had in the past? The freckled girl suddenly thought of something and asked Shen Zian. Shen Zian's pretty face darkened, and she said, Ling Han is an ignorant and incompetent, despicable and lowly servant. Do you know how he entered the academy? No. The three girls all shook their heads. He begged his father to exchange his life for it. Shen Zian smiled coldly. What, there's actually such a person? The three girls exclaimed in shock. Of course. Shen Zian poured dirty water on Ling Han. Have you heard of the Dark Demon Forest? I've heard of it. That's an extremely dangerous place. Even spiritual pedestal tier elites don't dare to enter, the three girls nodded. I've heard that more than 100 years ago, a predecessor of the academy entered into the Dark Demon Forest and lost a precious treasure inside. Thus, Ling Han's father came to an agreement with the academy. He would enter into the Dark Demon Forest to retrieve that precious treasure, and Ling Han would be able to enter into Huyang Academy, Shen Ziyan said. This person is too evil. How unfilial. The freckled girl and the other two shook their heads. He was simply a scumbag. For the sake of entering the academy, he actually let his father take such a risk. Shen Ziyan sneered. Rumors were the most marketable. Within a few days, Ling Han would become a rat that everyone wanted to beat up. She hated Ling Han. She had hated him ever since they got engaged. However, after Ling Han's rise, this hatred turned into hatred. She definitely didn't want to be laughed at behind her back, saying that she was blind and missed out on a good son-in-law. Thus, she wanted Ling Han to lose all standing and reputation. Ling Han improved rapidly. After a mere 4 days, he broke through to the 7th layer of Poly. However, he wasn't the fastest. There was another guy that was even more monstrous. Hunyo. The little girl's spirit base was not only extremely strange, but also had an ability to absorb spiritual chi that wasn't inferior to Ling Han's. After she hatched from the egg, she inexplicably obtained a cultivation technique that completely matched the speed at which an immortal-grade spirit base absorbed spiritual chi. Just from this alone, she wasn't slower than Ling Han. More importantly, she could still eat. The ability to refine what she ate into origin power didn't disappear with the awakening of the spirit base. On the contrary, it became even stronger. Thus, in a short 5 days, the little girl reached the 9th layer of body refining tier. It was unknown if the barrier of a large tier could restrain her. After all, this involved comprehension of the tier, and wasn't something that could be done with power alone. However, this wasn't a problem at all. 1 day passed, and Hunyo quietly advanced into Poly tier. It was as easy as drinking water. Ling Han didn't know what to say anymore. Could it be that Hunyo was also the reincarnation of some great elite? That wasn't impossible. The spirit base in the little girl's dantian was really too strange. Not only did it transform into a peerless beauty, it could even open its eyes and almost cut his soul. And in the eyes of the Lu sisters, these two people, one big and one small, were undoubtedly monsters. They had seen how their cultivation had soared so rapidly in a short few days, which gave them a feeling that it was unreal. Indeed, in comparison, their cultivation was higher, but it had to be known that this was after exhausting all the resources of the Falling Flower Palace, which allowed them to reach high-level Gushing Spring tier before the age of 20. However, after that, they would have to rely on their own hard work and talent. But this level of freakishness, one big and one small, was obviously still able to maintain it. This was what was truly frightening. Ling Han wanted to refer to Hunyo's cultivation technique, but the little girl couldn't explain it no matter how hard she tried. She only said that this cultivation technique seemed to be instinctive to her, and would circulate naturally. There was no need for her to understand it, nor was she able to repeat it. On the other hand, thanks to Shen Ziyan, Ling Han's reputation as a despicable son had spread throughout the academy. Everyone thought that Ling Han had forced his father to sell his life to enter the academy, and could not help but look down on him. In this way, Feng Luo had become a righteous man, and the matter of Wei He-li's expulsion was even brought up again, suggesting that a retrial should be carried out. Perhaps they had wrongly accused Wei He-lu. What should we do? Everyone is saying bad things about you now. Lu Yutong came over. When she mentioned the rumors, she was naturally gritting her teeth. Anyone who came from the Yuan city would naturally know that Ling Han had obtained first place in the tournament to enter the academy. But now, the rumors were so powerful that no one believed the truth. The innocent will know their innocence. If others want to gossip, then let them. If they dare to say it in front of me, I will knock all their teeth out, Ling Han said, completely unconcerned. As a former powerful warrior of Heaven Tier, how could he possibly take other people's techniques to heart? When he displayed his invincible martial prowess, he would naturally be able to suppress all the rumors. Knock, knock, knock. It was at this moment that they heard a knock on the door. Because the door was not closed, a beautiful face peeked in and asked, "Is young Master Ling here?" Lu Yutong turned her head to look, and could not help but reveal a strange expression. Ling Han's luck with women was a little too strong. He had only entered the imperial city for a few days, and he had already gotten to know so many beautiful women. Ling Han also took a look, and could not help but smile as he said, "Silly little girl, why are you looking for me?" That beautiful woman was Yun Shuang. She had originally been in a good mood, but when she heard Ling Han's words, she immediately exploded in anger. She said in exasperation, "Madam invites you to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion to thank you in person." "Oh, when?" Ling Han asked. "If young Master Ling has nothing important to do today, then let's do it tonight." "All right." Ling Han nodded. He indeed had nothing important to do. Chapter 157. I'll go with you. Lu Yutong immediately said. She naturally knew what kind of place the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was, a gold-squandering den for men, so how could she not worry? Yun Shuang finally glanced at Lu Yutong, bowed slightly, and said, "So it's a noble daughter of the Lu family, Shuang has been rude." Lu Yutong looked slightly awkward, because she did not recognize Yun Shuang, but in her opinion, women from the Cherishing Flower Pavilion were naturally filthy beyond compare, and she did not bother to recognize them. Moreover, the other party was going to drag Ling Han to that kind of place to play, which naturally made her even more displeased. Thus, she only nodded reservedly, and did not even say a word of courtesy. Yun Shuang could not help but show a hint of anger. She was the adopted daughter of Lady Yan, and did not need to entertain guests, so she similarly had a high self-esteem. However, in front of a noble daughter like Lu Yutong, she indeed could not escape being born into a brothel, which made her feel very uncomfortable. Lady Yan said that only young Master Ling is invited. She did not directly confront Lu Yutong, and only used Lady Yan's words to tactfully decline. Nyo wants to go too." Hunyo scurried out and hung onto Ling Han's arm, looking like a spoiled child. "Yes, we'll all go," Lu Yutong emphasized. With Hunyo here, even if Ling Han's lust soared to the heavens, he could only behave. "Let them go together." Ling Han picked up Hunyo. "The older one is willing to listen, but even I can't handle the younger one." He. Hunyo's eyes lit up, and she said, Meet. Whether Hunyo went or not, Yun Shuang did not care. She was displeased with Lu Yutong, but since Ling Han said so, she could only say, "Then please come to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion tonight for a chat." Shuang will take her leave. After she left, Lu Yutong's expression became slightly better. Ling Han could not help but smile, and said, "My little female attendant, are you jealous?" Who's jealous?" Lu Yutong's pretty face immediately turned bright red. She was as beautiful as a flower and incomparably alluring. Ling Han laughed heartily and changed the topic. "How's the business of the clothing store?" "Very good, we've already snatched all of the Chen family's business." However, the Chen family will definitely not just sit there and wait for death. After this, they will either start a price war or send people to cause trouble at our shops. Lu Yutong's eyebrows furrowed slightly. After all, those shops did not have the Lu family's banner on them. Ling Han smiled and said, "There's no harm in starting a price war. I'm not thinking of making money in the first place. If they dare to send someone to cause trouble, it'll give me a good reason to go to their door and make a move." Lu Yutong suddenly understood. Indeed, his own store was destroyed, and as the owner, Ling Han naturally had a good reason to make a move. However, the Chen family probably won't make a move themselves. They'll ask someone from the Earth and Water faction. Earth and Water faction. A cold light flashed in Ling Han's eyes. This faction would even do something like snatching a little girl, so it was obvious how dirty they were. He already had the thought of flattening them. "I reckon that the Chen family won't use violence first, but will also start a price war to see if they can make us retreat. I'll take advantage of this time to deal with the Earth and Water faction first." Lu Yutong could not help but look worried, and said, "The Earth and Water faction have colluded with the 8 great clans. If you make a move against the Earth and Water faction, it may attract the 8 great clans to interfere." Ling Han was extremely displeased. In his last life, when had there ever been a time where his hands and feet were tied like this? But who asked him to only have the power of element gathering tier now? Even in a small place like Rain Country, he couldn't dominate. "I'll go to Tianyiji first. I'm spending money like water now, so I have to earn some money," he said after some thought. Go to Tianyiji to earn money? Lu Yutong revealed a strange expression. Who would go to Tianyiji not to spend money? But this guy actually had the idea of earning money in Tianyiji. But when she thought of Ling Han's terrifying alchemy ability, it seemed reasonable. "Let's go. Since someone's treating tonight, we'll eat outside for lunch as well." Ling Han carried Hunyo out. "What about the 2 in the house?" Lu Yutong chased after them. She was referring to the Lu sisters. "Oh, it's good enough that you took them in, and you still want me to take care of them, cook 3 meals a day," Ling Han said with a smile. An enchanting smile instantly blossomed on Lu Yutong's face. Obviously, Ling Han had no interest in the Lu sisters at all. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't act like this. This discovery made her very happy, and even she herself felt it was strange. Bringing 2 beauties, one big and one small, with him, Ling Han arrived at Tianyiji. Young Master Han had just stepped onto the long and wide flight of steps when he saw an old man in his 60s coincidentally walking over. When he saw Ling Han, the old man quickly walked over and called out in a very respectful tone. There were 4 other people behind the old man, and they were all his disciples. When they saw this, they all looked indescribably shocked. This was Grandmaster Yuan Yuan, a genuine black-grade middle-level alchemist. He was only 1 step away from being on equal footing with the 2 big bosses of alchemy in Rain Country. But Yuan couldn't help but bend his back, and his face was filled with undisguised reverence. That was not an act at all, but respect that came from the bottom of his heart. If Ling Han was Wu Song Lin, or Fu Yuan Sheng, then it wouldn't be strange. Alchemy was the same as martial art. The difference of 1 cultivation level was like the difference between heaven and earth, but he was only a young brat, so how could they not be stunned? Damn it, they all rubbed their eyes hard, not daring to believe it. "You are." Ling Han only recognized the other as one of the alchemists who had observed his alchemy techniques that day, but who exactly was he didn't know. Pooh! Everyone fainted. "Grandmaster Yuan, your face is just short of sticking to your shoes, and you don't even know who Grandmaster Yuan is? This is really, completely speechless. I am Yuan. Some time ago, I observed young Master Han concoct alchemical pills and learned a lot. However, I was immersed in young Master Han's techniques that day, and actually did not know when young Master Han would leave. This is really a sin, and I hope young Master Han will forgive me," young Master Han said in fear and trepidation. Hiss, everyone was shocked once again. With Grandmaster Yuanchu's status, he actually apologized for not seeing Ling Han off. What kind of background did this brat have? It was practically terrifying. Ling Han smiled and said, "No matter. Young Master Han, are you here to concoct alchemical pills again today?" Yuanchu asked, filled with anticipation. He had an inexplicable confidence that as long as Ling Han concocted alchemical pills a few more times, he would definitely be able to break through to become a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, he was naturally very proactive. "Can this old man calculate?" Ling Han smiled and said, "That's right, I'm here to concoct an alchemical pill." "Please, please." Yuanchu hurriedly invited him in respectfully. Under Yuanchu's respectful welcome, Ling Han entered the main hall. "Young Master Han." Xiaoying immediately came forward, her face filled with pleasant surprise. Now that she had been promoted to a minor manager, she originally did not have to wait at the entrance to receive guests, but she had always wanted to see Ling Han again. Thus, she had been doing this for the past few days, and finally, her wish had been fulfilled. Ling Han smiled and nodded at the other party, causing the corners of Lu Yutong's lips to curl up uncontrollably. This guy was really merciful in all aspects. Chapter 158. Ling Han only nodded at Xiaoying, and came to the third floor of the palace hall with Yuanchu's company. This was the place where high-level alchemists concocted pills and rested. "How about this, we won't limit the number of people today. I'll concoct pills, and you guys can observe. Everyone will just have to reluctantly accept 1,000,000 silver coins," Ling Han said to Yuanchu. "Pooh," Yuanchu's 4 disciples once again spluttered. 1,000,000 silver coins for concocting pills in one go, were you fucking robbing them? Even the corners of Lu Yutong's mouth twitched. 1,000,000 silver coins for one go, and even if there were only 10 people each time, then concocting pills for one go would net them 10,000,000 silver coins, and 10 times would be 100 million. 100 million. The Lu clan had a large business, and their monthly income was definitely more than 100 million silver coins, but in terms of pure profit, it was definitely not that much, and it was far from that much. A single person could rival an entire clan. No wonder Ling Han was so confident that he could destroy the Qin clan's finances. It was too easy for him to earn money. However, would Yuanchu agree? Really? Yuanchu's eyes widened, and he looked pleasantly surprised. Only 1,000,000 silver coins. Damn! Lu Yutong and his 4 disciples felt like they were going to faint. Yuanchu actually thought that 1,000,000 silver coins was too cheap. Of course, if Ling Han concocted pills a few more times, he would be able to break through. How could a few million silver coins compare? Moreover, as long as he broke through, he would be able to concoct even higher grade alchemical pills. And with every increase in grade of alchemical pills, the price would also soar exponentially. It could be said that every high-level alchemist was wealthy enough to rival an entire nation. However, most alchemists were not misers, and would use this huge sum of money to improve their own alchemy skills. But as long as they reached black grade, which alchemists did not have a few tens of millions in assets. 1,000,000 was really nothing. Ling Han did not care about money at all. This was only a worldly thing, and when one's ability advanced into the flower blossom tier, money could not buy the cultivation resources they needed. They would have to barter for what they needed. Of course, money was still useful now. Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't have asked for a viewing fee. Yuanchu immediately went to call for people, and very quickly, all the black-grade alchemists arrived one after another. However, there were pitifully few yellow-grade alchemists. There were only Li Si-chan, Qi Zhantai, and a few others, and finally, Fu Yuansheng. "Old Fu, you came at the right time. Help me collect the money," Ling Han said bluntly. This time, Yuanchu's 4 disciples really fainted. That was Fu Yuansheng, one of the 2 big shots of alchemy in Rain Country, yet in Ling Han's mouth, he had become Old Fu. Fu Yuansheng, however, immediately came forward with a face full of smiles. To be able to serve a Grandmaster of Alchemy, that was his honor. Speaking of which alchemist here had not started out as an alchemy apprentice, and had done quite a bit of work to assist others. Therefore, not only did the crowd not look down on him, they were full of envy. To be able to serve a grandmaster, it really makes people jealous. Everyone happily handed over the money. Only Li Si-chan and Qi Zhan-tai were exempted. Black-grade alchemists really did not lack money. Today, I will be concocting foundation building pills. Everyone knows that this is a black-grade high-level alchemical pill, so I will take the opportunity to be certified as a black-grade high-level alchemist, Ling Han said. Foundation building pill. When they heard Ling Han mention the 3 words, foundation building pill, everyone looked astonished. There were many types of black-grade high-level alchemical pills, and the difficulty of concocting them naturally varied greatly. Normally, they were divided into 4 categories: easy, difficult, extremely difficult, and almost impossible. The so-called almost impossible was actually a pill close to earth grade. Being able to concoct such an alchemical pill meant that one would definitely be able to break through to earth grade. Foundation building pill was precisely the almost impossible to concoct. This kind of alchemical pill could help a spiritual ocean tier cultivator build his foundation and prepare for building his spiritual pedestal. It was one of the rarest alchemical pills for breaking through. The first was the difficulty of concocting it, and the second was the effectiveness of the completed pill, which allowed the foundation building pill to become a pill close to earth grade. For a martial artist, there were 3 types of alchemical pills that were the most valuable. The first was to increase one's cultivation level, the second was to help one comprehend martial art, and the third was to break through. If these 3 types of alchemical pills were to be ranked, then it would be the other way around. Alchemical pills for breaking through were the most valuable, and also the rarest. Alchemical pills that could prolong one's life were not included, because only natural medicines could have such an effect. Concocting such pills would only have the opposite effect. Everyone here had heard of the foundation building pill, but in a small place like Rain Country, no one could concoct it, including the 2 big bosses of alchemy. And if this kind of alchemical pill could be sold in large quantities, one could imagine how many powerful spiritual pedestal tier cultivators would appear in Rain Country. This could very possibly overturn the power structure of Rain Country. Just thinking about it made these people's scalps go numb. An alchemist changing the power structure of a country sounded like a dream. I want these ingredients, Ling Han said to Fu Yuansheng. The foundation building pill was ranked close to earth grade because of its difficulty in concocting and its effects, but the ingredients required were not much different from normal black grade high-level alchemical pills. Tianyi would definitely have them. As expected, Fu Yuansheng immediately nodded and waved his hand to have someone open up the storeroom to retrieve the ingredients that Ling Han needed. Calculate, how much is it? Ling Han said with a smile. How can we take young Master Han's money? Fu Yuansheng hurriedly waved his hand. Yet Ling Han insisted, saying, I must take it. Once he took the money, the foundation building pill that was concocted would belong to him. How much were the ingredients worth? 1 million or 2 million could be used to form the pill. Don't think it's too expensive to bid for 10 million. It was guaranteed that there would be a lot of people fighting over it. Fu Yuansheng could only smile sheepishly. He wanted to take a completed pill and study it carefully. One had to know that the success rate of forming a close-to-earth grade alchemical pill was shockingly low. If a cauldron was filled with 10 ingredients, then it would be very good to have one completed pill. 2 was practically nature-defying. Black-grade high-level ingredients were still very expensive. A single cauldron of ingredients was worth as much as 3 million. If the cauldron exploded, then that would be burning up 3 million silver coins for nothing. But as long as he managed to concoct just one pill, then not only would he be able to break even, he would also be able to earn a huge profit. This was a high-level alchemical pill, and it was a rare type of high-level alchemical pill, so it was worth this price. Ling Han had completely come empty-handed. He had come empty-handed, and had earned 18 million just by selling the observation fee, yet he had only paid 3 million now. And with his ability, what was a close-to-earth grade alchemical pill? Even if he could only concoct 3 pills, just thinking about it, the value would still be terrifyingly shocking. Everyone, please be careful. I'm about to begin, Ling Han said. Because these people had all paid, he was also giving them a reminder. Everyone's eyes widened. Not only would they be able to observe the alchemy skills of a grandmaster, they would also be able to witness the birth of a cauldron of close-to-earth grade alchemical pill. Just thinking about it made their scalps go numb. Ling Han's expression gradually became serious. When it came to alchemy, he would never be careless. After taking in a deep breath, he suddenly began to move. Instantly, his movements were as smooth as flowing water. It was very pleasing to the eye, as if it was in accordance with some kind of natural law. Chapter 159. Ling Han saw a fragment of that great battle in the shards of the blood-sucking origin gold. What he could be sure of was that the giant of origin gold had definitely been defeated. In his previous thoughts, that giant should have been dismembered, with its shards scattered everywhere. But there was also another possibility. For example, that giant of origin gold had only been partially destroyed, and the majority of its body was still intact. If that was the case, then it would not be strange for the giant of origin gold to be suppressed in the mystery realm, and part of its shards appearing in Rain Country. Of course, the possibility of this was very small, pitifully small. But when he thought of how terrifying the giant of origin gold was, Ling Han still decided to go to the Devil's Sky mystery realm. If that giant of origin gold was really suppressed below, then he definitely had to ensure that the seal was being strengthened, and not being undone. So many years have already passed. Even a monster like the giant of origin gold should have died by now, right? Ling Han comforted himself like this. But for an existence like the giant of origin gold, even if it had really died of old age, its indestructible body would still be able to give birth to a second life. It was just that it would be a completely different person. No matter what, he definitely had to go to this Devil's Sky mystery realm. How do I enter the Devil's Sky mystery realm? He asked. Very simple. After the mystery realm opens, teleportation doors will appear in various places, and after passing through, you will directly enter into the mystery realm, Lu Yutong said. She paused for a moment, then continued, the reason why we know that the mystery realm has opened is because these doors have already appeared. This time, 3 doors have been discovered in Rain Country. The closest one to us is 300 miles east of the Imperial City, Li Si-chan said. Ling Han nodded, and asked, in the Devil's Sky mystery realm, aside from the blood zombies, are there any other dangers? The humans inside have all died, but there are still some demonic beasts, and they seem to be trapped inside, so there is no way to bring them out. Moreover, we are unable to stay inside for long, as we will be rejected. After a certain amount of time, we will be automatically expelled from the mystery realm, Lu Yutong answered. It is said that there is a terrifying existence in the depths of the mystery realm. That is a restricted area, so we will just be wandering around the outer perimeter. After such a long time, the mystery realm has finally reappeared, so there will definitely be a large amount of spirit grasses that have matured. That is our main target, Li Si-chan said. Lu Yutong nodded in agreement. Cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques had been plundered from generation to generation, so it was practically impossible for them to be left behind. However, spirit grasses were different. They had harvested a batch this time, and the next time would be at least a few decades later. Especially this time, it had only reappeared after 300 years, so there would definitely be a large amount of spirit grasses waiting to be harvested. What about the restrictions for entering the mystery realm? Ling Han continued to ask. In short, the lower the cultivation level, the easier it is to pass through. However, it is not certain every time. Sometimes, even spiritual pedestal tier warriors can enter, and sometimes, even gushing spring tier warriors cannot pass through, Lu Yutong said, shaking her head. Ling Han thought for a moment, and felt that there was no harm in doing so. Firstly, he had not offended any powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier. Secondly, if even spiritual ocean tier warriors could enter, then he had Guang Yuan by his side. Thirdly, if only those below gushing spring tier could enter, then he would not be afraid at all. Even if he encountered elites like Kenyi or the eldest imperial prince, he would at least have the ability to protect his own life. Moreover, wasn't Kenyi now his underling? Not long after, Huyang Academy made an announcement, ordering all the students to immediately set off and enter the Devil's Sky Mystery Realm. The first priority was to head to the center hall to carry out the blood sacrifice. If there was not enough blood, then blood zombies would come out to wreak havoc in the world, and who knew how many people would die then. Very soon, Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, Bailey Tingyun and the others all ran over to Ling Han's side. They were all from the Yuan city, so they naturally had to form a group and help each other. Brother Ling, your cultivation level. Qi Yongyi was the first to notice, and could not help but be greatly shocked. How did it drop to the first layer of element gathering tier? Jin Wuji and the others all sensed Ling Han's aura, and indeed, it looked like he only had one origin nucleus. Expressions of disbelief also appeared on their faces. They had only heard of people being stuck at a certain level, unable to break through for a long time, but this was the first time they had seen someone's cultivation level actually drop so drastically. Ling Han laughed, and naturally would not explain. He said, since everyone's here, let's set off. Qi Yongyi and the others also knew that Ling Han's awesomeness was actually in the field of alchemy. In the Yuan city, he had already made 3 black-grade alchemists bow down to him, and now he was even more awesome. Even black-grade middle-level alchemists had to kneel down and lick his boots. In this way, what did it matter whether Ling Han's cultivation level was higher or lower? They set off, and Ling Han even made a trip to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to call Li Hao over. Only then did the group leave the Imperial City, heading east. On their way, there were more and more people. The Devil's Sky Mystery Realm was not only related to cultivation techniques, spirit herbs, and other good things, but also required a large number of people to use blood sacrifices to prevent the blood zombie from coming into being. Thus, no matter what kind of ability one had, it was best to send in some fresh blood as a sacrifice. This was a matter of great importance at the national level, and the power of the imperial family had already been effectively mobilized, mobilizing personnel from various cities to advance towards the Devil's Sky Mystery Realm. Half a day later, Ling Han and the others arrived at the location of the teleportation door. Rather than calling it a door, it would be better to call it a vertical whirlpool. There was a black halo spinning around it, and it was about 10 meters tall, looking very majestic. This teleportation door did not have a front or back, and no matter which side one jumped in from, the person would immediately disappear, as if they had been swallowed alive. Ling Han nodded internally. In his last life, he did not have such a method, and it would only work if he was an ultimate elite of Shattering Void tier. Some people had already entered impatiently, while others were still waiting outside, as if they wanted to form a group and wait for a large group of people to enter together. And before everyone entered, they would be branded with a mark and given a map. The mark represented the people of Rain Country, and the map was very simple, only marking the location of the central hall. The people of the 9 nations of the desolate north could all enter the mystery realm through the teleportation doors of various places, and it was not limited to the citizens of Rain Country. For example, Rain Country and Fire Country were bordered by each other, and conflicts would frequently erupt. In the past few thousand years, who knew how many people had died, and they had long since become mortal enemies. Once they met, they would definitely fight to the death. This mark was used to distinguish enemies, and was directly branded on the back of one's hand. It could last for close to a month, which was more or less enough. And this time, the suppression of the teleportation door was not particularly strong. Even spiritual ocean tier martial artists could enter, but spiritual pedestal tier martial artists could not. Ling Han. A voice that was gnashing his teeth in anger was heard, filled with endless resentment. Ling Han turned his head, and could not help but have a strange expression on his face. Feng Luo. Did this guy have the fate of a cockroach? He actually appeared again. Moreover, his 2 arms were indeed reattached, but they were obviously not as nimble as before. It was as if they had been forcibly glued onto his arms, and they were dangling on both sides of his body, which was very strange no matter how one looked at it. After all, it was already very good that his arms could be reattached, and if they were still as nimble as before, that was practically illogical. Chapter 160. A good story. 9 pills. How could this be? One had to understand that even if Ling Han had achieved a 100% success rate in concocting the foundation-building pills without the slightest bit of wastage, the ingredients provided by Fu Yuansheng would only be enough to concoct 8 foundation-building pills. Now, however, 9 had appeared. What kind of logic was that? He must have failed. Everyone, take it yourselves. Fu Yuansheng took out a pill and handed it to someone beside him. That person took it and hurriedly sniffed it, then finally moved closer to the source of the light. Finally, he revealed a shocked expression and said, "Though I am not talented and knowledgeable, I can be 100% sure that this is definitely a foundation-building pill, and what?" the crowd asked. "And the quality seems to surpass 10 stars, the person said hesitantly. Pooh, everyone almost fainted. They were filled with 120 disbelief. Theoretically, a black-grade high-level alchemist could concoct a black-grade high-level pill of 5 stars. A genius could reach 8 stars or so, and a rare genius could reach 10 stars. But 11 stars, 12 stars, this was impossible. Only a high-level alchemist could concoct a low-level pill. Could it be that Ling Han's alchemy ability had already reached Earth grade? Hiss! Give it to me. The crowd scrambled for it. Fu Yuansheng hurriedly stopped them. A foundation-building pill was close to Earth grade, so it was extremely precious. He had everyone line up, then inspected them one by one. It's really a foundation-building pill. This color, this smell, it's exactly the same as described in the alchemy manual. Indeed, this exquisite luster, the quality should surpass 10 stars. Heavens, I'm going crazy. There's actually such a thing. Everyone exclaimed. A 17-year-old youth actually concocted a close-to-Earth grade pill, and the quality even surpassed 10 stars. No, they had to consider Ling Han's terrifying success rate, 100%. It's not 100%. He could only concoct 8 pills, so why are there 9? Someone thought of this. Fu Yuansheng inspected the remaining 8 foundation-building pills one by one, and said confidently, "I can use my reputation to guarantee that these foundation-building pills are not only successfully concocted, but their quality is not inferior to the one just now." Using the reputation of a black-grade high-level alchemist as a guarantee, there was definitely no problem. Genius, young Master Han is truly an absolute genius of alchemy. I understand now. It's because young Master Han had obtained the essence of the medicinal ingredients with a higher effect during the purification process just now that he was able to concoct 9 foundation-building pills. That's right. Our so-called limit of 8 pills is established on the basis of ordinary purification methods, but with young Master Han's method, it is indeed possible to refine one more pill. Heavens! Everyone hugged their heads and cried out in surprise. Their gazes towards Ling Han were filled with fanaticism, as if they were looking at an alchemy god. As a matter of fact, it was not far from the mark. Ling Han stood up and said, all right. I've received the money and the performance is over. It's time for me to go." He walked over to retrieve the pill and placed it into a jade bottle. Then, he turned to Fu Yuansheng and said, "When you're done with the verification, send the badge over." Fu Yuansheng hurriedly agreed. His expression was respectful, as if he was an alchemy apprentice who had just entered the sect. Ling Han left with Hunyo. The little girl had long since fallen asleep in Lu Yutong's arms out of boredom. However, when they arrived at the restaurant and smelled the tempting aroma of the dishes, the little girl wrinkled her nose and immediately woke up. Meat, she said happily. After satisfying Hunyo's huge appetite, the 3 of them went to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. They did not plan to keep these 9 foundation-building pills for themselves, so they were naturally going to be sold. And this kind of rare alchemical pill belonged to the category of priceless pills, so how could they be sold cheaply at a clear price? Naturally, they had to go through an auction. In the Imperial City, there was no better auction house than the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. However, if they were to go through an auction, there would be a process of advertising, so they would not be able to earn back their money immediately. However, it was not a big deal. Ling Han had just earned over 10 million, which was enough to support his ready-made clothing stores to operate at a loss for a long period of time. What would you two guests like to buy? A shop assistant immediately came forward to greet them. Hun Yo was naturally ignored by him. Ling Han smiled and said, I have some alchemical pills that I would like to auction. Please ask your appraiser to come and evaluate the price. Alchemical pills, hee. There was a man and a woman at the side. The man was about 40 years old, and his face was filled with disdain. He said, What kind of alchemical pills can a youngster like you bring out? Don't make a fool of yourself here. He swept a glance at Lu Yutong, and there was a look of amazement on his face. This is Grandmaster Fan Dongping, a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, the woman beside him immediately introduced. His looks were not bad, but the makeup on his face was a bit too heavy. The shop assistant was a bit embarrassed. It was the guests' freedom to choose what they wanted to auction off. As long as the item was appraised to be of a high grade, it could be auctioned off. Anyway, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion had a fixed commission. However, a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist was not someone he could afford to offend. He immediately clasped his hands towards Fan Dongping and said, I'll go invite appraiser Ma over. Then, he ran off like a wisp of smoke. Fan Dongping was very pleased with himself. He glanced at Lu Yutong from the corner of his eyes, hoping to see a shocked expression on her face. However, he was disappointed to see that this beauty, who was as cold as an ice mountain, did not show any change in her expression. The gaudy woman stared at Lu Yutong with jealousy. This woman was more beautiful than her, had more elegance than her, and most importantly, was younger than her. After a while, the shop assistant led a middle-aged man in his 40s over. His cultivation level was only in the 7th layer of poly, but his whole body exuded a faint scholarly aura, making one feel comfortable. This is appraiser Ma Tiansheng, the shop assistant introduced. Ling Han did not mind and handed the pill bottle over to Ma Tiansheng, saying, I'll have to trouble appraiser Ma to help me with this. Let me do it. Fan Dongping suddenly reached out and snatched the pill bottle. Then, he smiled at Ma Tiansheng and said, I'm a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist. When it comes to the appraisal of alchemical pills, I should not be inferior to Brother Ma, right? A look of displeasure flashed across Ma Tiansheng's face, but due to the other's identity as an alchemist, he did not flare up. He immediately nodded with a dark expression and said, Please go ahead. Seeing this, Fan Dongping could not help but feel pleased. He was naturally purposely putting on a show to attract Lu Yutong's attention. However, he did not think that he was already so old, yet he still wanted to rob the cradle. He uncorked the bottle, and with just a sniff, his expression immediately changed. Then, he took a look inside and hurriedly capped the bottle, putting it directly into his pocket. Only then did he say to Ling Han, Brat, this bottle of spirit-gathering pills is not worth much. Here, this is 10,000 silver coins. I'll do a good deed and help you collect it. Ling Han was shocked. He knew that Fan Dongping was very shameless, but he had not thought that he would be shameless to this extent. What was the difference between this and robbery? Ma Tiansheng did not know what alchemical pills were contained in the pill bottle, but seeing Fan Dongping's anxious expression, he knew it was not simple. Instantly, anger rose on his face and he said, This is something that our customer has entrusted to our precious treasures pavilion for auction. Please hand it over to me to appraise. AI, it's hard to be a good person. Take it. Fan Dongping took out a pill bottle from his pocket and threw it at Ma Tiansheng. Ling Han swept a glance over it and could not help but smile coldly, because the pill bottle had already been swapped. What great guts! Chapter 161. Ma Tianxing took the pill bottle. He didn't look closely at Ling Han's original pill bottle, and naturally didn't know that Fan Dongping had swapped it. Opening it, he couldn't help but reveal an expression of displeasure. This was indeed a spirit-gathering pill, and its quality wasn't very good, only 5 or 6 stars. There was no point in auctioning it. Young man, this is only a normal spirit-gathering pill, it doesn't have the right to be auctioned. Ma Tianxing threw the pill bottle to Fan Dongping, a trace of anger on his face. He was actually auctioned off for a bottle of spirit-gathering pill, which made him very displeased. Lu Yutong already understood, and her gaze towards Fan Dongping carried a trace of killing intent. Fan Dongping, on the other hand, was immensely pleased. He didn't know that what he swapped was a foundation-building pill, but he could determine that it was at least a black-grade pill. Exchanging it for 10,000 silvers, he really made a profit. If he knew that it was a foundation-building pill, he probably wouldn't have dared to do such a thing, because the implications were too great. A mere 16 or 17-year-old youth, so what if he knew that he swapped? What could he do to him, a middle-level yellow-grade alchemist? "Let's go," he said to the pretty girl beside him. After all, he had a guilty conscience, so he naturally had to leave this place first. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and said, "Daring to steal my things, you're quite daring." "I don't know what you're talking about, let's go." Fan Dongping's heart jumped. He'd swindled a bottle of black-grade pills, this was a windfall. "Can't leave," Ling Han said indifferently. I'm a middle-level yellow-grade alchemist, do you dare to stop me?" Fan Dongping said coldly, stepping forward. "Paw!" Ling Han reached out and grabbed Fan Dongping's wrist, smiling. "I'm not just stopping you, I'm also going to beat you up." "You dare!" Fan Dongping shouted. "Let go! Let go your sister!" Ling Han's fist shot out, and with a paw, it landed squarely on Fan Dongping's left eye. Instantly, the guy screamed in pain, and covered his eye with one hand. When he released his hand, his eye had instantly turned pitch black. "Be bastards!" Fan Dongping cried out harshly. "You don't even care about the people from the Spiritual Treasures sect? Do you still want to do business here?" Hearing his words, Ma Tianxing immediately revealed a troubled expression. Indeed, it was forbidden to cause trouble in the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. However, he didn't like Fan Dongping's character, which was why he didn't immediately stop him. However, now that Fan Dongping had said this, he naturally couldn't pretend that he didn't see anything. "Young man, let go immediately!" he shouted at Ling Han. Peng, 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 peng. Ling Han acted as if he hadn't heard anything, and continued to beat Fan Dongping. He actually dared to steal his things. How dare he? Ma Tianxing revealed an angry expression. This young man actually dared to ignore his words, and even dared to attack in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion. He was too audacious. He snorted and called out, "Men, capture this brat for me." Lu Yutong immediately took a step forward, and Hu Niu also revealed her ferocious nature, baring her teeth at Ma Tianxing. Ling Han found a jade bottle from Fan Dongping's body. He was naturally aware of his own belongings, so he did not hesitate. He directly tossed it to Ma Tianxing, and said, "This is what I want to auction off." Ma Tianxing sneered, and said, "Making a move in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and you still want to act as if nothing happened?" "Wrong, I only caught a thief, took back my lost things, and gave him a beating," Ling Han said calmly, and glanced at Ma Tianxing, his eyes filled with dignity. Ma Tianxing's heart tightened. It was as if Ling Han's gaze could penetrate the depths of his soul, causing his whole body to tremble. He couldn't help but open the jade bottle, but it was only for an instant before he revealed a shocked expression. As an appraiser, he naturally didn't know how to concoct pills, but he was very familiar with alchemical pills, because this was his job. Foundation building pill. Ma Tianxing immediately exclaimed, an indescribable shock on his face. In that instant, he believed that Ling Han's words were not false. Previously, Fan Dongping had definitely switched the pills and tampered with them. Otherwise, with his mere status as a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, how could he possibly possess foundation-building pills? At least you have some good eyesight. Ling Han nodded. Foundation-building pills definitely didn't appear in Rain Country, but this person was able to recognize foundation-building pills with a single glance, so he could be considered to have some knowledge. Ma Tianxing couldn't be bothered with Ling Han at the moment. He poured out a foundation-building pill, and carefully evaluated its quality. Ling Han smiled calmly. Since that was the case, then he'd just go back to his own business. He stretched out a foot and stepped on Fan Dongping's face, and said with a smile, "How dare you, even daring to steal my things? Brat, you're dead." Fan Dongping said sternly, "I'm an alchemist, and you actually dared to injure me. This is a crime punishable by death. Moreover, you even stole my alchemical pills, so that's an additional crime. You really are unrepentant." Ling Han shook his head, and said to Lu Yutong, "According to the laws of Rain Country, how much money would someone like him have to steal to be sentenced to death? The crime of theft could be serious, or it could not be serious. It depended on the amount and of course the person. For a poor commoner to steal 10 silver coins was a serious crime, but for a rich person, stealing 10 silver coins would only cause them to be looked down upon by others. For Fan Dongping, who was a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, to be sentenced to death for the crime of theft, the amount of money would definitely be very high." Lu Yutong thought for a moment, then said, "At least 10 million. Ling Han said to Ma Tianxing, "Are these foundation-building pills worth 10 million? Ma Tianxing instantly glared angrily at Ling Han. What kind of joke was this? These were foundation-building pills, and one pill was worth at least 10 million. Do you have any common sense? But when he remembered that these foundation-building pills belonged to Ling Han, his aura instantly softened, and he said, "There are a total of 9 foundation-building pills here. If they were auctioned, they would be worth at least 100 million silver coins. 100 million silver coins. Fan Dongping instantly felt like he was going to faint, and he felt an incomparable chill. To be able to take out an auction item worth 100 million silver coins, how could Ling Han be an ordinary person? But if he was really arrested for the crime of theft, putting aside the fact that he would be humiliated, the huge sum of 100 million silver coins was definitely enough to sentence him to death. At the side, the beautiful woman was already trembling, and quietly retreated, obviously wanting to draw a clear line between herself and Fan Dongping. "No, these pills are mine, mine." Fan Dongping could only stubbornly refuse to let go, or else he would really be done for. "Are you an idiot?" Ling Han kicked him, "A stupid pig like you can actually concoct alchemical pills that are close to Earth grade. You yourself are an idiot, but do you think others are idiots as well?" Fan Dongping's face was deathly pale. He knew that he had poked a hornet's nest this time. Even the 2 big bosses of alchemy of Rain Country might not be able to concoct alchemical pills that were close to Earth grade, so the background of this young man was definitely terrifying. "Lord Ma." 3 guards had made a big commotion here, and they quickly walked over, looking at Ma Tianxing with questioning eyes. "Take this person down." Ma Tianxing said coldly, "Make a report to the Imperial Guards, there is a thief here." "Yes, Lord Ma." The 3 guards immediately dragged Fan Dongping, who was like a dead dog, away. Chapter 162. "May I ask how I should address you, young master?" Ma Tianxing was all smiles. His previous bad impression of Ling Han was naturally swept clean. This was a wealthy guest that could produce alchemical pills that were close to Earth grade. In the whole of Rain Country, was there another person like him? Definitely not. "Ling Han, you can just call me young Master Han," Ling Han said. Ma Tianxing could not help but wipe off his sweat. He did not want to call a young man young master at all, but the latter was indeed an important guest. If he offended Ling Han and caused him to give up on the idea of holding an auction here, then he would have to bear the consequences. Young Master Han. He could only call out and said, "Please come with me, I'll help young Master Han register." "All right." Ling Han nodded in agreement. The news that 9 alchemical pills that were close to Earth grade appeared in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion quickly spread to the higher-ups. An old man in embroidered robes appeared to receive Ling Han, and said, "I am the 3rd elder of this pavilion. My surname is Jia Bo Yun. Senior Jia." Ling Han clasped his hands in greeting. The other party was a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier, so he was worthy of this greeting. "Young friend, do you plan to auction these foundation building pills, or directly sell them to our pavilion?" Jia Bo Yun asked. Ling Han smiled slightly, and said, "Auction." This kind of alchemical pill that could help one break through was naturally auctioned to maximize its value. Jia Bo Yun looked slightly disappointed. If he directly sold them to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, then they would only be able to auction one foundation building pill every few years. Firstly, it would boost the reputation of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, and secondly, it would be more valuable when it was rare, so they would be able to maximize the value of these 9 foundation building pills. Unfortunately, this brat was not that stupid. However, these 9 foundation building pills would definitely be auctioned off for an astronomical sum. Just the processing fee alone would be enough for them to earn a lot. "Young friend, if you entrust our pavilion to auction, the usual fee is 15 points. However, the value of the foundation building pills is too high, so I can make the decision to lower it to 14 points. How about that?" Jia Bo Yun said with a smile. How sinister, having to draw so much. On the side, Lu Yutong curled her lips. 9 foundation building dawn were worth more than 100 million yuan, and these 14 dawn were worth more than 10 million yuan, which was more than a month's net income of the Lu family. However, Jia Bo Yun was generous enough to give away at least 1 million yuan of profit. Of course, this was because the price of the foundation establishment pill was too high. Sure. Ling Han nodded. He had never valued money. Jia Bo Yun laughed and continued, "If we want to sell these 9 foundation building pills for a good price, it would be best to auction them off in several batches. If little friend is not in a rush to use money, it would be better to take your time. Because the higher the auction price of the foundation establishment pills, the higher the income of the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion." Therefore, Jia Bo Yun naturally hoped to proceed with the best plan. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Auction them all at once." Jia Bo Yun was startled, and could only sigh. Who asked this to be someone else's property? Even if he was as strong as a spiritual pedestal tier elite, he could only offer suggestions. To Ling Han, foundation building pills were something that he could easily concoct, so he naturally would not care whether the auction price was higher or higher. In any case, it would definitely be a sky-high price. At most, he would concoct some other alchemical pills that were close to Earth grade in a few days' time, and he would still be able to earn some money. Alright, this is a letter. When the time comes, little friend can use this to collect the money, or you can entrust it to someone else. But take note, if you lose it, you must report the loss immediately. Otherwise, if someone mistakenly collects the money, even I will be powerless, Jia Bo Yun reminded. This token was divided into 2 parts, with each side holding 1 part. When put together, it would be seamless. Then, both sides would leave their handprints on the other part of the token. In this way, they could avoid the possibility of counterfeiting. Little friend, if there are more alchemical pills like this in the future, why don't you bring them to my Spiritual Treasures Pavilion to auction? We can still discuss the handling fees, Jia Bo Yun said. All right. Ling Han agreed decisively. Ling Han and the others left the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. As for that Fan Dongping, he naturally would not have a good ending. There was no need for Ling Han to worry about that. Even if he was a yellow-grade middle-level alchemist, when it came to a sum of over 100 million, he would not be able to escape death. Who asked him to be so greedy? It was getting late, so Ling Han brought Lu Yutong and Hu Niu to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. The three of them strolled around the streets slowly. Hunyo ran around everywhere, trying out lollipops, cotton candy, anything new. In this way, when they arrived at the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, the sky was already completely dark. Young Master Ling, this way please. Yun Shuang was already waiting inside, and when she saw Ling Han's figure, she immediately came out to greet him. They arrived at a side courtyard. When Yun Shuang pushed open the door and entered, she saw Lady Yen supporting a young man as she came out to greet them. Lady Yen said, "Young Master Ling has graced us with your presence. Please forgive me for not going out to greet you." Ling Han glanced at her and said, "No matter, it was not convenient for Lady Yen either. I understand. This should be your son, right? He has been unconscious for a few years, and his body is still very weak." "Thank you for your understanding, young Master Ling," Lady Yen said with a smile. She then said to the young man beside her, "Tian Per, this is your savior. Quickly greet him as Big Brother Ling." "Big Brother Ling." The young man immediately called out. His face was very pale, and his voice was weak. "Young Master Ling, this is my son. His name is Yen Tian Zhao." Lady Yen introduced him to Ling Han, then glanced at Lu Yutong. She could not help but smile, and said, "Young Master Ling is really lucky to have gained the favor of a noble daughter of the Lu clan." Lu Yutong's pretty face instantly flushed red, but her impression of Lady Yen increased greatly. She liked hearing these words. Come, sit inside first." Lady Yen led them in. Chapter 163. None of them wanted to make a move, because Senior Brother Ma had already used up a strength talisman. This thing was very valuable, and it wouldn't be much less than the value of a fire-eyed bull. So, even if they managed to take down this fire-eyed bull, the bulk of it would definitely go to Senior Brother Ma. How much could the others get? Who would want to risk their lives for a mere few hundred taels of silver? But they had no choice. Senior Brother Ma was glaring at them fiercely. Whoever didn't make a move would definitely be killed by Senior Brother Ma first. There was no law here. Everyone could only brace themselves and make a move. But each of them was even more careful. They didn't dare to be rammed by this bull, or be sprayed by the fireball. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they would lose half their lives. Although they were weak, they could at least divert some of the fire-eyed bull's attention. Senior Brother Ma took advantage of this opportunity to make a move. Peng, 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 the great battle started once again. Senior Brother Ma was now able to match the fire-eyed bull. Adding on the fact that he had close to 10 helpers, he naturally had the upper hand. After being hit by Senior Brother Ma's rod on its waist and back, the fire-eyed bull revealed a look of fear. It wanted to run. But Senior Brother Ma and the others had paid such a huge price, how could they allow this prey to escape? Naturally, they stopped it with all their might. Not long after, the fire-eyed bull was riddled with wounds. This demonic beast also knew that it couldn't escape. Instead, it revealed a fierce expression and emitted a resolute aura. It was going to risk its life. The fire-eyed bull has an innate secret technique, 10 directions incineration. It explodes the source of fire power in its body in one go, and its destructive power is extremely terrifying. But this will also cause the fire-eyed bull's source of fire power to collapse, and it may never be able to recover, Ling Han mumbled. N. Hunyo sat with a serious expression, continuously nodding her little head as if she understood what Ling Han said. But Senior Brother Ma and the others obviously didn't know that the fire-eyed bull had such a powerful technique, and they all surrounded it to attack. Everyone, put in more effort. This demonic bull is almost at its end. Although the bull's eyes are the most valuable, if it gives birth to a calculus bovis, then it'll be even more valuable. Attack with all your might. If anyone dares to slack off, I'll make him regret it later. Under the strict orders of Senior Brother Ma and the others, Everyone could only increase the intensity of their attacks, creating more opportunities for Senior Brother Ma to attack. Hong! A raging flame suddenly spewed out from the fire-eyed bull's body, shooting out in all directions. It was as if thousands or tens of thousands of fireballs were shot out at the same time. Aside from retreating, there was no way to dodge. But the speed at which the flames spewed out was too fast. Only Senior Brother Ma and the others had a high cultivation level, and managed to escape the range of the flames in time. The others were all burnt to ashes by the flames. Even so, there were many places on Senior Brother Ma and the others' bodies that were charred, with patches of black and charred. They were in an extremely sorry state. When this powerful technique was unleashed, the fire-eyed bull instantly didn't even have the strength to stand, collapsing onto the ground with a pang. Damn it, damn it! Senior Brother Ma cursed and cried out in pain. I'll have to waste a lot of medicinal pills to heal my wounds again. This time, there's really almost no profit. In any case, we've taken down this fire-eyed bull, another person said with a smile. He walked up and stabbed his sword into the fire-eyed bull's head. This fire-eyed bull's four limbs instantly spasmed, but very quickly stopped, ending its life. However, there's still one more person to deal with. Senior Brother Ma raised his staff and walked towards the large tree where Ling Han was. A cold smile appeared on his face, and he said, "Brat, did you think I didn't notice a rat like you?" When he walked over, he didn't hide his tracks, and even talked for a while with the others. The people in the surroundings would naturally notice him, so what was there to be proud of? So many people have died, and you still think you can escape? Senior Brother Ma sneered, and brandished his staff to strike. Pang! The metal staff smashed onto the trunk of the tree, and the tree was instantly snapped in half. The gigantic trunk toppled over, causing the ground to tremble slightly. Ling Han leapt up, and landed on the ground not far away with Hun Yo in his arms. A cold glint appeared in his eyes, and he said, "There's no enmity between us, and yet you want to kill me? Who asked us to be injured? What if you sneak attack us while we're recuperating? Then wouldn't we be in a very passive position? So, please die now," Senior Brother Ma said coldly. Ling Han smiled, and said, "On what basis are you guys so confident that you've definitely got me?" Ha ha ha. Senior Brother Ma and the other two laughed loudly. "You're only in the first layer of element gathering tier, and you still want to cause trouble?" As expected, his current state was really attracting too much hatred. Ling Han shook his head, and said, "I really don't want to act cool, but I've decided to eat you 3 pigs. Impudence." One of them shot out, and the long sword in his hand shone with a cold light as it sliced towards Ling Han. He was in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier, and was even heavily injured, but against someone in the first layer of Element Gathering tier, he would definitely be able to kill him with a single strike. Naturally, there wouldn't be any accidents. Thus, Senior Brother Ma and the other person stood there with smiles on their faces. Ling Han moved. Chong, the long sword was unsheathed, and 6 flashes of sword chi shot out. What? 6 flashes of sword chi? Senior Brother Ma and the other person gasped in shock at the same time, but they immediately calmed down. No matter. Although 6 flashes of sword chi was shocking, Ling Han's cultivation level was really too low. Even 10 flashes of sword chi wouldn't be able to make up for the difference of 9 whole cultivation levels. Poo, piu, the cold light was like a wash, and the flesh and blood of that person in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier was actually sliced off piece by piece. When Ling Han's sword chi had completely passed through, the person had also become a bloody mess. Fuck me. Senior Brother Ma and the other person's mouths were wide open, and their eyes were as wide as saucers. This scene completely shattered their worldview. Chapter 164. Returning to Huyang University, Ling Han separated from Lu Yutong. He had just returned to his own courtyard when he was nagged by Lu Ru'er. "You're such a failure as a landlord, not even preparing food for us," she said angrily. Ling Han's expression became strange, and he said, "Don't tell me you two don't know how to cook." Lu Ruer's eyes instantly widened, and she blurted out, "How did you know?" "I can tell just by looking at your imbecile appearance." Ling Han sighed. This pair of assassin sisters were really failures. They were not good at killing people, and did not even know how to cook. They were really too weak. "Hein, who are you calling imbecile?" Lu Ruer's expression was instantly filled with indignation. "When my cultivation recovers, I'll definitely beat you up." Ling Han could not help but laugh and said, "Then why would I still keep you two enemies?" I've been short on money recently, so I'll just report the information about these two criminals. I should be able to get quite a bit of reward money." Lu Ruer's beautiful face instantly paled, and she exclaimed in shock, "You're scaring me." "Is that so?" Ling Han crossed his legs, a profound look on his face. Lu Ruer was hesitant. She had always lived under her sister's protection, so she did not have to worry about the evil of others. Now that she had to face Ling Han, who had lived two lives on her own, she was naturally being played around by him. "Come, sing a little song for me. If you sing well, I'll let you go," Ling Han said with a smile. Lu Ruer finally realized that Ling Han was scaring her on purpose. She could not help but pat her perky breasts, and said, "You're really a bad person." But she immediately raised her head, and said, "Fine, I'll sing a song. However, it's not that I'm afraid of you, but I haven't sung for a long time, and my throat is itchy." She began to sing softly, and the melody was mellow, moving one's heart. Ling Han nodded internally. This girl was muddle-headed, but she was quite good at singing. She had really chosen the wrong profession. So noisy. Hunyo was woken up by the song, and glared at Lu Ruer with displeasure, her ferocious nature on full display. Lu Ruer was very displeased, and said, "Such a beautiful voice, and you actually say it's noisy? You really don't have the slightest bit of elegance." "Hein." Hunyo glared at her defiantly. The two girls glared at each other, as if they were going to stare at each other until the end of time. Ling Han yawned, got up, and walked to the bedroom to sleep. "Xiao." Hunyo immediately leapt up and hung on to Ling Han's body. Then, she turned around and made a face at Lu Ruer. What a failure. He couldn't even handle a child. Lu Ruer pulled at her hair in frustration. She, an assassin, had actually lost to a little girl's gaze? Was she really suited to be an assassin? When he woke up, the sun had just started to rise from the east. Ling Han sat cross-legged and began to cultivate. He had now deliberately woken up earlier to avoid cultivating with Hunyo. This way, he wouldn't have to run back and forth. Not bad. I'll be able to break through to level 8 poly in 3 days. Ling Han smiled. What he desired the most now was to break through to Gushing Spring tier and explore the secrets of the Black Tower. At this time, the sun had already risen. Ling Han woke Hunyo up, and though the little girl was very unwilling, she still began to cultivate at Ling Han's request. Hunyo's potential was extremely terrifying. In the future, her achievements might not be inferior to his. Ling Han was preparing breakfast, which made him feel very gloomy. In the past, he only had one little girl, but now he had 2 big girls, and he still had to cook. There was really no justice in this world. At this moment, there was a knock on the main door. Who could it be? Ling Han walked over and opened the door. It was actually Jin Wuji. Why did this guy come? Brother Jin, why are you here so early? Ling Han said with a smile. Jin Wuji smiled bitterly, and said, Brother Ling, I want to ask you for a favor. What favor? Ling Han asked, not taking everything on himself. Jin Wuji hesitated for a moment, then said, I wonder if Brother Ling can reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? Ling Han could not help but look at Jin Wuji strangely. Could it be that this guy had an agreement with Lady Yen? He had just received the Cherishing Flower badge yesterday, and today, someone had already asked him to help reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. "Brother Ling, I have no other choice. You know a lot of people, and I am really at my wit's end. That's why I have to shamelessly ask for your help," Jin Wuji said with a sigh. Ling Han smiled and said, "What exactly is going on? Why do you need a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion? Don't laugh at me if I tell you." Jin Wuji actually blushed. Ling Han said seriously, "I definitely won't laugh at you." Jin Wuji organized his thoughts, and began to speak. As it turned out, a year ago, he had met the daughter of a small clan in the imperial city. Her name was Jiang Fei Yan, and the two of them fell in love with each other, to the point of discussing marriage. However, the Jin clan was a great clan in Deyuan City, but in the imperial city, it was only equivalent to the level of a small clan. Moreover, this was right under the emperor's nose, so the people here naturally felt that they were superior to others. The Jiang clan was not satisfied with Jin Wuji, their future son-in-law, and had always wanted to separate this young couple. Thus, Jin Wuji had been racking his brains, trying to change the way the Jiang clan treated him. Treating everyone in the Jiang clan to a meal in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was undoubtedly an extremely good idea, because the threshold to enter the Cherishing Flower Pavilion was too high. If one wanted to reserve a seat, they would at least need to be from a mid-tier clan. But the problem was, he was currently only in poly-tier. Even if he had broken through to Gushing Spring tier, why would the Cherishing Flower Pavilion bother with him? In the recent few days, the Jiang clan had the intention of marrying Jiang Fei Yan to the 7th young master of a mid-tier clan. Thus, Jin Wuji really had no other choice, so he came to Ling Han to try his luck. After all, Ling Han had just arrived in the imperial city, and he was already acquainted with Wu Songlin's disciple, so it was even more likely that he would be a guest of Grandmaster Wu. Thus, even if Ling Han could not reserve a seat in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, he could still use Wu Songlin's connections. When he heard this, Ling Han could not help but laugh loudly, and said, "I had never thought that Brother Jin was such a sentimental person. Brother Ling, I said I wouldn't laugh." Chapter 165. Don't worry. Ling Han smiled and said, "When do you want to invite Miss Zhang's family? When can Brother Ling get a reservation?" Jin Wuji asked in return. He naturally hoped that it would be as soon as possible. Ling Han spread his hands and said, "Any day is fine. If you're in a hurry, tonight is fine." "Tonight is fine." Jin Wuji's heart involuntarily beat faster. What kind of concept was that? The 8 great clans and members of the imperial family naturally had the right to reserve a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, but they could not just go as they pleased. They had to make a reservation in advance. Only a few people had this special privilege. The Cherishing Flower Pavilion would always reserve a few side courtyards for emergency use, and they could give them out without a reservation. For example, the 3rd Imperial Prince. He had this special privilege. But what was the 3rd Imperial Prince's status? He was a genius in martial art himself, and possessed the powerful ability of a martial artist in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier. He was also one of the successors to the next emperor of Rain Country, and would become the most powerful person in the future. But what about Ling Han? Could it be that he also had the right to do so? Jin Wuji was really shocked. He knew that Ling Han was very monstrous. At that time, he had charged out like a dark horse and became the champion of the Deyuan tournament, and had even obtained the full support of 3 black-grade low-level alchemists. But that was only in Deyuan City. Now, this was the Imperial City. Ling Han had only been here for a few days, and he was already so popular, comparing oneself to others was really infuriating. Jin Wuji could not help but sigh internally. He had already been in the Imperial City for over 3 years, but aside from the increase in his cultivation level, his own status had not improved in the slightest. Compared to Ling Han, it was really embarrassing. He did not doubt that Ling Han was boasting. He might joke, but he would definitely not boast about this kind of thing. Then tonight it is. Jin Wuji said, unable to conceal the excitement on his face. A small clan like the Jiang clan could not even enter the main doors of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, what more having a meal in a side courtyard. As long as he made this trip, would he still have to fear that the Jiang clan would be so narrow-minded as to object to his marriage with Jiang Feiyan? Sure. Ling Han nodded. Many thanks, Brother Ling. Many thanks, Brother Ling. Jin Wuji bowed repeatedly, appearing to be incomparably moved. He secretly decided that in the future, no matter what Ling Han needed his help with, he would definitely do his best to help him. He turned around and left. Naturally, it was to inform the Jiang family about the banquet that night. This was extremely exhilarating. Ling Han was comprehending the sword in the courtyard. He had reached a bottleneck. He had been stuck at the level of 6 flashes of sword chi for a very long time, but he had not been able to break through. In fact, even for an outstanding swordsman, being able to cultivate 1 strand of sword chi in 10 years was already extremely impressive. Moreover, the more sword chi one cultivated, the slower one's advancement would be. One could be called a genius of the sword Dao if he could cultivate 10 sword chi in 100 years. However, Ling Han was not satisfied. His starting point was too high, so he naturally could not be compared with normal progress. Previously, he had been discussing the sword Dao with Mo Gao. Mo Gao was a strange genius who had even touched the edge of sword heart, which gave Ling Han a great deal of inspiration. He was able to form 6 flashes of sword chi on the spot, but this also exhausted all his accumulated knowledge, so it would be difficult for him to advance any further in a short period of time. Ling Han sat cross-legged, his right index finger extended like a sword, and continued to dance about, verifying the sword Dao in his heart. Before he knew it, it was already noon. He stopped to prepare food for Hunyo. The food that he and Lu Feng had prepared was completely supplementary. It would already be good if they could eat even 1% of the food. In the afternoon, he continued to study the sword Dao. For Ling Han, the academy could not teach him anything at all. Before he came, he had already made up his mind. This was only to appease Ling Dongxing's heart. The path that he would walk in the future was naturally already laid out. In the evening, Ling Han brought Hunyo to the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. He flashed the Cherishing Flower badge, and naturally, there was a servant girl who led him to an elegant side courtyard, asking him about the dishes and wine that he would be serving later. The cold dishes were served first. When Hunyo saw them, she could not help but feel an urge to eat, and could not help but steal a bite, causing the 8 servant girls to cover their mouths and snicker. Ling Han naturally would not blame her. After all, he did not lack money now. After eating 1 plate, he would just have to serve another. After about half an hour, under the guidance of a servant girl, a group of 8 people walked in. Aside from Jin Wuji, the other 7 were naturally members of the Jiang clan. They were Jiang Feiyan, her parents, 2 aunts, and 2 sons. This is the side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. It's so beautiful. In the past, we've only been to the normal rooms of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Come, Fei Yan has found the right person this time. He even managed to reserve a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. That's right, that's right. I heard that only the 8 great clans and the imperial family have the right to reserve a side courtyard. If that's the case, then wouldn't we be on the same level as the 8 great clans and the imperial family? The elders of the Jiang clan were all filled with excitement. The lives of a small clan were carefree, and what they lacked was a rise in status and recognition. If they could have a meal here today, it would be enough for them to boast about it for the rest of their lives. Do you have any souvenirs here that I can hang on my body? Eldest aunt immediately asked the servant girl. If there was, then she would hang it on her body every day, and flash it at whoever she saw. The servant girl was startled. Those who could come to the side courtyard to eat were naturally of high status. She had never been asked such a question before. After a moment's pause, she finally said, "We don't have any." "How could you not have any?" Youngest aunt also came over. "How about you get someone to make one for us?" Right, right, make one. Eldest aunt hurriedly said. Hearing the words of the two elders, Jin Wuji and Jiang Fei Yan both blushed, feeling extremely embarrassed. Meanwhile, Jiang Fei Yan's two older cousins kept staring lecherously at the faces of the few servant girls, appearing extremely focused. Brother Jin. Ling Han stood up, and beckoned to Jin Wuji. Brother Ling. Jin Wuji returned the greeting gratefully. Many thanks, Brother Jin. You've allowed me to bask in your glory, and allow me to have a meal in the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, Ling Han said with a smile. Jin Wuji knew that Ling Han was doing this to make him proud, and could not help but feel even more touched. He could only nod continuously. Ling Han smiled slightly. Though he had some conflict with Jin Wuji and Jin Wuxiang before, Jin Wuji had already apologized and let bygones be bygones. Afterwards, Jin Wuji had gone easy on Jin Wuji during the De Yuan tournament, and had even led his clan's men to rescue Ling Dongxing. Whether Ling Han needed it or not, this was still a favor. Favors naturally had to be returned. Thus, Ling Han was willing to be a supporting character to Jin Wuji today. Of course you have to thank my Wuji. Eldest aunt's face was filled with disdain, appearing to be filled with disgust. I heard that you are Wuji's friend from De Yuan City. You really are a country bumpkin who doesn't know the rules. It's already very polite of me to let you come, but you actually brought a little girl with you. Jin Wuji's expression instantly changed, and he could not help but want to interject, but when he saw Ling Han shake his head at him, he could only forcibly restrain himself. Ling Han did not take eldest aunt's words to heart at all. It went in one ear and out the other. There was no point in arguing with such vulgar people. In any case, he would only meet them once. In the future, he would never be able to meet these people again. Thankfully, it was the first time the Jiang clan members had come to the side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, so they were all new to the place. When the dishes were served one after another like flowing water, they could not be bothered to look down on Ling Han, and all began to eat. Aya! A servant girl suddenly exclaimed, pointing at eldest cousin of the Jiang clan, and said, He touched my butt. Chapter 166. What are you shouting for? Are you a tiger's butt that I can't touch? Eldest cousin Zhang Hualian humphed, looking very displeased. After all, touching someone's butt was a despicable act. Even if he considered himself a playboy, he was unwilling to be exposed in public. Quickly kneel and apologize to my cousin. Second cousin Tong Yuan spoke up as well, his face filled with arrogance. We are honored guests of your Cherishing Flower Pavilion. Do you know what it means to be honored guests? Those who are able to enter the side courtyard are at the level of spiritual pedestal tier. We can kill your entire family with just a word. The female attendant's face was filled with shame and anger. However, she was only a weak female attendant. She was obviously at a disadvantage, yet she became the villain instead. The two aunts were indifferent. In their eyes, a mere female attendant was naturally incomparable to a hair on their son's head. So what if she touched someone's butt? It wasn't like she would lose a piece of flesh. Moreover, weren't all the women here for sale? What were they pretending for? Eldest cousin, second cousin, forget it. Jiang Fei Yan spoke up. As a woman, she naturally felt sympathy for the female attendant, but who asked the one who took advantage of her to be her cousin? She couldn't possibly side with an outsider, right? Fei Yan, you will be the daughter-in-law of a great clan in the future. Your status is so noble, you don't need to pity these little bitches. Eldest aunt immediately said to Jiang Fei Yan, her tone filled with lecturing intent. That's right, Fei Yan, you can't be so soft-hearted. As the mistress of a great clan, you have to be cruel and merciless. Youngest aunt also spoke up. Jiang Fei Yan's parents, however, remained silent. In the Jiang clan, they had nothing to say, and could not even compare to their two married daughters. In reality, it was indeed so. The current clan head of the Jiang clan was Jiang Feiyan's grandmother, and she doted on her two married daughters the most. Because they had married well, their husbands were all sons of mid-tier clans. Though they were not of high status, they were naturally very confident in front of their relatives from small clans. Every time they returned to their parents' home, they would flaunt their prowess in front of their brothers. As time passed, Jiang Feiyan's father and mother spoke very little, allowing them to speak to their heart's content. This time, Jiang Feiyan's marriage to a mid-tier family was naturally arranged by these two aunts. They naturally came for Jiang Feiyan's sake. However, now that Jin Wuji had suddenly become so awesome, and was even able to obtain a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion, the two aunts' attitudes towards him changed greatly. They began to repair their relationship with Jiang Wuji's father, hoping that they would be able to climb up Jin Wuji's high branch in the future. The female attendant was almost in tears from the words of her two aunts. However, the Cherishing Flower Pavilion had its own rules, so she did not dare to cover her face and leave. When Zhang Hualian saw this, he couldn't help but feel even more lustful, and he said, "Come, sit beside this young master and accompany this young master to drink." Humph, Ling Han stood up. He knew that the Jiang family was snobbish and overbearing, but he didn't expect the two juniors to be like perverts. He walked over to the maid, took out a banknote and handed it over. "I'm really sorry, this is a small token of my appreciation. Although it can't make up for the injury to your dignity, please accept it." The female attendant glanced at the banknote, and couldn't help but pale in shock, because it was actually in the denomination of 10,000 taels. One had to know that she was only a female attendant, and her cultivation level was only in the 7th layer of body refining tier. Every month, she could only earn 300 taels of silver. Although this was not low, compared to 10,000 taels of silver, there was indeed a huge difference. "Young master, I can't accept it," she said with a red face. "Just accept it," Ling Han said with a smile. With a wave of his hand, he said, "There is no need for you to serve here, all of you can leave." "Yes, young master." The 8 female attendants all bowed. They naturally knew that Ling Han was the one who could truly make the decision, and they all looked at Ling Han with grateful eyes. When they swept their eyes over the members of the Jiang family, their gazes could not help but be filled with strong disdain and contempt. "Who allowed you to leave? Hurry up and stay!" Zhang Hualian immediately shouted. "That's right, how dare you leave?" Tong Yuan even stood up, and made to stop them. Jin Wuji hurriedly stood up as well, and pushed Tong Yuan back down. He said, "Second cousin, let it go." He knew that Ling Han was already displeased. If he allowed Tong Yuan to go and cause trouble, it would be inevitable that Ling Han would explode in front of everyone. The 2 female attendants of the Jiang clan were originally about to explode, but when Jin Wuji also spoke up to let it go, they naturally could only suppress their anger. They did not dare to offend Jin Wuji now. After all, this was a man who could get his hands on a side courtyard of the Cherishing Flower Pavilion. "Wuji, it's not that second aunt wants to criticize you, but you are good to your friends because you are loyal, but friends are still outsiders after all. How can they be more reliable than your own people?" Second aunt pursed her lips, and directed the spearhead at Ling Han. "That's right, you were kind enough to let your friend come here to see the world, but he actually brought a dirty little girl with him, as if she had never eaten anything in her entire life. Isn't that embarrassing? Eldest aunt advises you to cut off this kind of friend," eldest aunt said from the side. Neither of them spoke in a low voice, obviously purposely wanting Ling Han to hear them. Jin Wuji jumped in fright. "Cut off this kind of friend? Cut off this kind of friend? Do you think you have the right to sit here and eat today?" He snuck a glance at Ling Han, and when he saw that he was not angry, he finally calmed down. However, he did not dare to allow these 2 shrews to continue speaking. He hurriedly said, Come, let's all drink and eat. Uncle, auntie, let me offer you a toast." He directly raised his head, and drained the wine in his cup in one gulp. Ling Han knew that this was Jin Wuji apologizing to him in disguise. He smiled calmly. Today was to return Jin Wuji's favor, so he naturally would not easily lose his temper. He wanted to find out if the two female attendants of the Jiang clan were seeking their own death. When the wine was halfway through, they were all a bit tipsy. Eldest aunt stood up and said to second aunt, "We've never been to the side courtyard before. Let's take a stroll around. Who knows, we might meet some important people. If we can befriend them, we'll be rich in the future." Right, right, right. Second aunt hurriedly stood up as well. This pair of snobbish sisters supported each other as they walked out. However, after a short while, they returned, their faces looking as if they were glowing. "Guess who we met just now?" Without waiting for the others to answer, they hurriedly said, "Grandmaster Yuan Chun." Do you know who Grandmaster Yuan Chun is? A black-grade middle-level alchemist. He scared you to death. The members of the Jiang clan were really shocked. A black-grade middle-level alchemist was like a tall mountain to them, one that they could only look up to. "Hualian, Yuan, quickly come with me. Let's go pay our respects to Grandmaster Yuan Chun. Who knows, if Grandmaster Yuan Chun is happy, he might concoct a few cauldrons of alchemical pills for us." At that time, breaking through to the poly tier would be as easy as turning over your hands, eldest aunt said excitedly. This was the reason why the two of them had returned so quickly. That's not appropriate, right? Grandmaster Yuan Chun's status is noble. If we rashly go and disturb him, we might anger Grandmaster Yuan Chun, Jin Wuji immediately said. Ling Han gave him face and did not lose his temper, but what kind of status did Grandmaster Yuan Chun have? Why would he give him face, much less the Jiang clan? Che, we're high-class people now. Isn't it just concocting a few cauldrons of alchemical pills? Second aunt said casually. You two are fuck you pigs. Jin Wuji shouted in his heart. He had an urge to rush up and violently slap these two people's faces. Chapter 167. They walked a little towards the periphery of the ring-shaped mountain, and sure enough, Yang Ming took out an ancient book from behind a withered tree. The cover was almost completely rotten, and he didn't hide it very carefully. Half of it was even exposed. Obviously, at that time, Yang Ming should have just hid behind the tree trunk, casually stuffed the ancient book over, and immediately left, which was why he hid it so carelessly. Young Master Han, here. Yang Ming handed over the ancient book, and lowered his head slightly. There was a hint of indignation in his eyes that was difficult to detect. For a normal person, this ancient book was worthless, but for some people, it could be worth more than 1,000 gold coins. Ling Han took it unceremoniously. On the way here, he had also told the other party his name. Benefactor, benefactor, and so on. It sounded very awkward. He began to flip through the book in front of Yang Ming, without any hesitation. This was indeed a personal record of a predecessor. The beginning part recorded some trivial matters. This person was called Xiao Ding, and he was once a village chief. He managed a village and lived a peaceful life. The ancestors of the Xiao family had lived here for generations, but in Xiao Ding's generation, there had been a change. The entire village had been chased out of the secret realm, but Xiao Ding had used a deceptive trick to stay. He went against the orders of the demon master at that time, and entered the depths of the ring-shaped mountain, wanting to know why they were chased out. Relying on his understanding of this place, he avoided many obstacles along the way, and was able to go all the way deep into the mountain. However, he didn't manage to enter the core area of the deep mountains. A mysterious power infected him, making him feel as if he wasn't himself anymore. He immediately fled, but it was already too late. He only managed to flee to the original village before feeling powerless. He barely managed to record some of what he heard in the deep mountains, and the diary ended there. He should be dead. Xiao Ding's diary described in detail the various restrictions in the deep mountains. This was probably because he was afraid of forgetting, so he recorded it in great detail. Finally, he also made a guess. The Devil Sky Mystery Realm should be suppressing some terrifying existence, and the Central Hall was a backup strategy. Through the method of blood sacrifice, the restrictions in the deep mountains could be strengthened. Perhaps it had existed since a very long time ago, but something went wrong in his lifetime. Since the people in the Mystery Realm had all left, then what was the use of the restrictions? There was only one possibility: something was being suppressed inside, a source of inauspiciousness. Ling Han closed the diary and sank into deep thought. From now on, this Mystery Realm was still very stable, so it shouldn't be that something went wrong with the Mystery Realm itself and was about to collapse. So, why did they evacuate everyone at the time? In the past, a blood zombie had appeared in the Devil's Sky Mystery Realm, and Xiao Ding mentioned a source of inauspiciousness in his diary, thinking that something terrifying and evil was sealed here. Were the two related? Back then, was it the appearance of the blood zombie that caused everyone to be forced to evacuate? Mystery realms were opened by shattering void tier elites, but it didn't mean that every mystery realm had such an elite overseeing it. If shattering void tier elites couldn't shatter the void and fight their way into the realm of immortals, they would still die of old age. Perhaps there were a large number of blood zombies deep in the mountains that couldn't be suppressed without the power of the shattering void tier, but there wasn't such an elite in the Devil's Sky Mystery Realm, so they could only be forced to all retreat, leaving behind an uninhabited space and using this mystery realm to trap those things. Young Master Han, can we set off? Yang Ming asked cautiously. Ling Han nodded, and said, let's go. The three of them set off and advanced forward. After walking for more than half a day, they could finally see a huge canyon in the distance. It was as if a heavenly saber had struck the ring-shaped mountain, forcibly splitting a crack in this huge mountain that seemed to connect the heavens. The fracture that descended from the sky was absolutely terrifying, and Ling Han even felt a sliver of saber intent. In the past, there should have been a supreme elite who struck 4 times, forcibly splitting the ring-shaped mountain into 4 sections. Shattering Void Tier, it was definitely the Shattering Void Tier. Ling Han said inwardly. In his last life, even he didn't have such great power, only the legendary Shattering Void Tier would have such great mystical power. Even after countless years, there was still a sliver of saber intent left, unwashed by the passage of time. It was too terrifying. Saber intent could transcend millennia, it was unheard of. However, although the canyon was already in sight, it would still take a long time to reach it. However, since the target had already appeared, they were naturally full of vigor. Ah! A scream was heard in the distance. Obviously, another battle was taking place, which was a very common thing here. Shwa, shwa, shwa. From the dense forest on the left, 6 people suddenly dashed out, each of them holding a saber or a sword in their hands, but now, all of them looked as if they had seen a ghost. Their expressions were terrified, and they only knew how to run for their lives. Xiao, a black shadow darted out, extremely fast. With a single leap, it had already caught up to one of them, and swung its hand towards the back of that person's head. That person seemed to have lost his courage, and actually didn't even dare to parry. He just scattered his legs and ran, but he couldn't compete with that black shadow's speed at all. Instantly, his head was hit, and with a paw, his entire head was smashed into mush. A gush of hot blood spurted out. A terrifying and disgusting scene appeared. That black shadow actually pounced on that person, sucking his blood and gnawing on his flesh. Hiss! Blood zombie! Ling Han frowned, and naturally thought of that evil thing. Wrong, 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 this isn't a blood zombie, but a second-tier bronze-armored corpse. A young man dressed in black walked out from the dense forest. His face was deathly pale without the slightest hint of blood, and it gave people a feeling that he was haunted in broad daylight. He still held 3 iron chains in his hands, all of which were stretched taut as if they were tied to some heavy object. However, they disappeared into the dense forest, and couldn't be reached. 1,000 Corpse Sect. Ling Han frowned. What, you actually know about the 1,000 Corpse Sect? The young man in black stared at Ling Han, revealing a strong killing intent. Ling Han snorted, and revealed a disgusted expression. The Thousand Corpse sect was an extremely evil force. The people that came from this sect weren't strong themselves, but all of them would refine the corpses of elites to use as battle prowess. They were called corpse soldiers, and they could command them as if they were their own arms and fingers. Their battle prowess was extremely shocking. They divided the corpse soldiers into 3 major grades: bronze armored corpse, silver armored corpse, and gold armored corpse. Each grade was further divided into first tier, second tier, and third tier. There were a total of 9 grades, which corresponded to the 9 major tiers of martial artists, from body refining tier to heaven tier. Where did the corpse soldiers of the Thousand Corpse sect come from? Of course, they came from stealing the corpses of martial artists, and the stronger the martial artist was when he was alive, the stronger the corpse soldiers created would be. A third-tier gold-armored corpse could even rival a heaven-tier elite. In order to steal the corpses of powerful martial artists, the Thousand Corpse sect could be said to be deranged. Not only did they dig up ancient tombs, they even dared to steal the corpses of elites that had just been buried not too long ago. Thus, this sect attracted the disgust of a large number of people, and had once been jointly attacked. Ling Han had originally thought that the Thousand Corpse sect had already been annihilated, but he'd never thought that an heir would actually appear now. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.